In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. What's up? Ghost Fictions is here, and we're back again. This is a story where Issei was the successor of the biblical god Yahweh. Issei Hyoudu, the hand of God, is set up to take over heaven. Michael, however, will not go so willingly. When during one of his quests he crosses paths with the peerage of Rias Gremory, the princess of destruction from Kuoh Academy, a seemingly insignificant trait changes all the rules of the game. But before we start, please consider subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Don't forget to check the description for more informations. Now, let's get into part 1. Heaven. The throne of Michael. He knelt before the ornate chair. He knew it was but a perversion of its original splendor when God had occupied these halls. He wouldn't know. Unlike the great seraph who now sat on the throne, he hadn't existed before the end of God. Hyoudu. Michael spoke. If my sources are correct, and they usually are, the Gremory are having a bit of a problem. He paused for a moment. Although I am confident Azazel is more than capable of dealing with this issue himself, I think it's time you paid them a visit. Think of it as a token of our goodwill in times of need. Issei bowed his head in acknowledgement. Is that all you will have of me? Michael nodded. For now. You may leave at your leisure. Gabriel stood behind him, her 12 wings spread as he strapped weapon after weapon, holstered in leather straps to his body. When will you be back? She asked. I do not know. He replied in a flat voice. I do not like it when Michael makes you put your life on the line. Issei turned around to look her in the eyes. You know I am virtually untouchable. He said in a flat voice. Suddenly the angel had tears in her eyes. Do you feel nothing for me anymore? She whispered through quivering lips. He held her gaze, his face unmoving. The only thing I feel these days, Gabriel, he said, turning away from her, is the feeling in the wake of your absolute betrayal. You know I had no other choice. She wailed. Deigning her unworthy of further words, he spread his 14 wings. The sun radiated of the golden tips of his upper wings, which faded to white. The color turned to midnight blue by his third set and formed darker shades all the way down to the midnight black of his lower wings, with tips kissed with crimson red. Then he was gone. The darkness of the night rushed past him as he descended from heaven. A mere minute later he found himself in the Gremory court. Over the years he had grown a little too familiar with the place. He looked up, finding the window to Azazel's chambers. But the swish of his wings, he was in the air. Unlike the others of his kind, he could blend into the night, remaining hidden from view. It was a gift bestowed on very few. With trained balance and precision he landed on the narrow ledge outside Azazel's window. When Issei pried his fingers under the window he found it gave way. How careless of the fallen angel. He made himself comfortable in the frame of the open window, dangling one leg outside and waited. It took 3 hours, but his patience paid off. Outside the thick wooden door he heard muffled voices. He could identify Azazel's as one of them. Alright, I understand your reluctance to act, but do keep a close tab on them. The key clicked into the lock and the door swung open, bathing the room in light. Hello, Azazel. Issei said. The poor man jumped at hearing his voice. Damn it, Hyoudu, one of these days I swear my heart will give in with jump scares like that. Issei chuckled. If I wanted to jump scare you I would have hidden next to the door. Michael tells me you have an issue that needs dealing with. Michael worded it so eloquently, apparently I am your goodwill token in times of need. I should really get around to rutting out that poor fool's spies from my court. Azazel muttered. I would gladly accept your services, although I think sending the hand of God after my issues might be considered overkill. Issei quirked an eyebrow. Are you rejecting Michael's gift? Azazel's eyes went wide as he realized what he had implied. No, not at all. He was silent for a moment. A few of my angels went rogue, no one particularly powerful, but I have received troubling reports. Apparently they sided with Selzenfried and are aiming to steal sacred gear. It's unheard of such a procedure being performed before, so even I, the self-proclaimed leading expert on the field, don't know if it can be done. I, however, don't want to take my chances with Fried, or rather, Fried's connections. My lieutenants fear the stray community will see any preventive measures as a preemptive strike. Issei nodded in understanding. Name? He inquired. Names held a power few knew of in this world. Rainer, Kalwainer, Donasik, Middled. Their lives are forfeit. Issei said, before leaping out of the window. He soared high into the sky, far above the clouds, and turned to face the wind. He heard the familiar whispers only he could hear in his ear. Japan, Gremory, tainted ground. And so Issei found himself in a quaint city, barely worthy of the title. As far as he knew this was the only place in Japan where Gremory ruled. His wings disappeared and he started down the street. Issei did not need sleep. He would wander around till dawn, memorizing the streets. When those streets would fill with people come sunrise, he could start his hunt for clues. When the first golden rays crawled over the horizon some 7 hours later, he found himself drawn to a large school building. Something was off about the place. Not quite human in nature. He found his questions soon answered when the students trickled into the school grounds one by one. He was leaning against a tree, observing them, when an eye-catching duo made their entrance. He sensed the presence of an angel, a strong bloodline yet diluted in strength, a strength he was very familiar with. The daughter of Barakiel, how curious. Who the other girl was couldn't be more obvious. The Gremory always took great pride in their flamboyant hair. Apparently he had found the devil's home base. He turned away from the school, knowing it would yield little information to him. He would head to the mall, perhaps there he would catch some useful whispers and rumors. He passed a playground. A young girl crouched over a boy. He had tears in his eyes, a fresh scratch on his knees, from where he had undoubtedly hit the ground harder than intended. A green light glowed in the girl's hands. A sacred gear perhaps. There you go. You mustn't cry. Big boys don't cry. She told the kid with a kind smile. She got up, revealing the colors of her nun's garb, and unconsciously took a step back as she looked at the cold eyes of the stranger behind her. "Oh, hello there," she said, laughing nervously. "It was very kind of you to help that kid," Issei said. She smiled. "I would do the same for anyone else. My name is Asia. Asia Argento." He shook her outstretched hand. "Pleased to meet you, Issei Hyoudu. You should know it's not customary to shake hands here in Japan. You are not from around here, are you?" "I just moved in from England," she said excitedly. "I know we only just met, but could you do me a favor?" Asia asked. "Sure thing," Issei replied. "I'm looking for the church, could you tell me where it is?" Issei pointed uphill. "There it is, you can see the tower from over here. I'll walk you there," he offered. He had been there last night, seen derelict building. At the time it had been abandoned, however, something about this girl sparked his interest. The walk did not take long. A bare 10 minutes later they stood in front of the large church doors. "Would you like to come in?" she asked. An ominous presence now radiated from the building. Yes, I think I would like to come in," he said, his eyes on the once white tower. Lack of maintenance had withered it a shade of beige now. "The house of God is open to everyone," the girl said, pushing the doors open. Inside a girl stood. A disguised fallen angel. "Asia, it's so good to see you in the flesh at last," she said. "Who this man you brought with you?" she asked. "This is Issei Hyoudu, he helped me find the church." Issei concluded the girl really was too innocent. He doubted she realized the girl who greeted her was as fake as it could get. The girl bowed in greeting to Issei. "Pleased to meet, my name is Yuma Mano." And names carried power. Even fake ones. Perhaps the Gremory girl knew something about her. Creating a believable cover would require her to partake in school. There just so happened to only be one of those in town. So Issei found himself shadowing the crimson-haired girl after school through the abandoned hallways. The daughter of Barakiel was with her. To his frustration, the black-haired girl with the yellow ribbons in her hair kept looking over her shoulder every 12 steps or so. "Is something wrong, Akeno?" the Gremory girl asked. "It's nothing," the other one replied. "I can't have my queen worried over nothing. Tell me," the Gremory girl persisted. "I have the feeling we are being followed, Rias," she said. "Nonsense, I would sense it if anyone was nearby. The only souls I sense are those of the rest of the peerage, a few of Sona's peerage and the cleaners. Perhaps this would be an opportune moment to make his entrance. You would do well to listen to your queen, there are some things you cannot sense, Gremory devil," Issei said, dropping his invisibility spell. Immediately the two girls kicked into action. "Who are you and what do you want?" Rias said, raising a fist filled with crimson manifested destruction magic. "Peace, Rias Gremory. I am not here to cause you harm. Also I seriously doubt you could cause any harm to me, so I'd quit your little light show," he said, gesturing to her raised hand. The two girls looked at each other for a brief moment, nodded and stood down. "The question still stands," Rias said. "My name is Issei Hyoudu. I came to you because I hoped you might have some information for me. After you give me your answer I will leave and you will never see me ever again." Rias stood there, judging him. "Very well, walk with us then." Rias and Akeno led him towards an older building of the school. He sat on the couch, Rias opposite him as Akeno poured them tea. "Clearly you are a stranger here, you will be received as any guest would," Rias said. "Now, ask your question." Issei sipped his tea and had to admit it was good. "What do you know of a girl named Yuma Mano?" he asked. "She is a second-year student. Clean record as far as I know, though you might have to ask Sona instead." Issei quirked an eyebrow. "Sona? Sona Citri. She runs the student council." Akeno sat down next to Rias. "Well, you will be interested to know she is a fallen angel then," Issei said. "Now that is interesting," Rias said. "Why are you after her?" Issei contemplated his words. because people want her dead. This immediately put the two girls across him on edge again. And you are to be her executioner? Akeno asked. I haven't decided yet. If I can avoid the bloodshed I will. By no means I wish to defend a fallen angel, but out of curiosity. What is she guilty of? 4 fallen angels went rogue. Azazel has had reports of them brewing the wrong kind of plans and associating with the wrong people. He would rather not test the limits and intervene before serious harm is caused. I suspect Yuma is one of them, but I cannot act until I have found her allies. However, I will have to act fast. I fear innocent blood will be spilled if I don't. So you are one of Azazel's people? Rias asked. No. Issei replied. He got up and walked to the center of the room, where he had plenty of space. Oh, and Rias. I'd stay away from the derelict church on the edge of town tonight. In a brilliant display of colors ranging from gold to midnight to red he was gone. I think he was kinda cute. Akeno said. Rias jokingly punched the arm of her queen. How improper. You barely met the guy. I think so too. He somehow seems familiar though. The two girls sat in companionable silence. I think we should convene a club meeting. I think a visit to church is long overdue, don't you agree, Akeno? The black-haired girl giggled in response. Absolutely, we can't let Issei have all the fun on his own, now can we? As if on cue, Kaneko and Kiba walked in. Good. You're here. Akeno and I have planned a little excursion tonight. Earth. The abandoned church. Well, here goes nothing. Issei thought, mentally bracing himself. With a firm kick, he unhinged the 2 massive doors. Splinters flew everywhere as they collapsed. The church was surprisingly empty. Cautiously he made his way in. Maniacal laughter filled the once hallowed walls. Look who walked into my little trap, hahaha. Issei immediately pinpointed the source of the sound, but chose to humor the poor fool. But you are not a devil, no. Regardless, I will still enjoy killing you. A man in a long white coat emerged from behind the altar. He made a mocking bow. Allow me to introduce myself, my name is Fried. Fried Selzen. World's best exorcist. This clown really made it too easy. He would not kill Fried, that was not in his mandate. It, however, stated nothing about not harming him. Rias, Akeno, Kaneko and Kiba stood in the forest, perhaps a small 100 meters away from the church. Well, look what we have here. Looks like Rainer was right to post us on guard duty after all. Nosy devils wanting to disrupt our party. Rias motioned for Kaneko and Kiba to go. They had barely left when Rias and Akeno found themselves locked in an energy barrier with 3 fallen angels. Well then, middled, Donasik. What shall we do with these naughty devils? Akeno giggled and Rias had a stupid grin on her face. What's so funny? The fallen angel asked. I believe you should know one of our allies is already inside. Rias said. Impossible. There is no way a blood-curdling wail of unimaginable anguish ripped through the night, originating from the church. Rias released a giggle akin to Akeno's. My queen, if you would do the honors. Thunder sparked between Akeno's fingers. It would be my pleasure. She said with a sultry smile, licking her fingers. Hiba and Kaneko were not ready for what they found in the church. Writhing in a pool of his own blood, a man lay. His arms and legs bent in perfect curves like his appendages lacked bones. The white of his clothes was disrupted by hundreds of pinprick-sized holes, all of them slowly bleeding. Thousands of white needles were spread around the man, with him at the epicenter. Hiba looked down at the man, wide, frightened eyes staring back at him. I don't know what happened to him, but it appears most painful, doesn't it, Kaneko? Kiba said. Issei found himself in a large underground chamber. A fallen angel with long black hair who Issei could only assume was Rainer stood on a platform. Asia was chained up next to her. Issei made to intervene, stepping out of the shadows. With a wave of her hand, Rainer extracted a green gemstone from Asia, who let out a pained scream before going limp. Holding it in her hand, Rainer turned to face the intruder. Oh, it's you. She said with an unnatural enthusiasm. I felt something off about you when you visited my church. It's of no consequence now. Whatever you are, you will die now. Issei merely pointed a finger at her, breaking every bone in her body. The sudden overload of her nervous system caused her to give a pained yelp and faint. Her body collapsed on the floor with her arms and legs bent at unnatural angles. Funny, you are weaker than your exorcist buddy upstairs. He is still conscious. He turned to the mass of exorcists in the room. You can either leave now or undergo the same fate as her. Issei announced. The 4 who chose to defy him were easily dispatched. Issei carefully retrieved Asia's sacred gear and returned it to its owner before snapping her chains and scooping her up in his arms. She no longer breathed. It was a shame such an innocent life had to end. He had failed her. Once again he had been too late to prevent such a loss of life, but he would rather not remember that fateful winter night. Kaneko and Kiba stood a little dumbfounded as they witnessed an army of a good 100 exorcists run by like God's fury was on their heels. A minute later, they saw a lean boy, perhaps 16 years of age with icy blue eyes. A young blonde girl, clothes tattered, within his arms as he carried her up the stairs bridal style. "Come," he said as he walked by. "Well, Kaneko, looks like you may find a friend in this guy, he is just as eloquent as you," Kiba said, smiling. Silently the white-haired girl turned and walked after the man. Rias and Akeno were patiently waiting for him. "Who is she?" Rias asked, gesturing to the girl in his arms. "Hopefully someone you can save," Issei said. "Why would I save a stranger? She has a sacred gear that may prove useful to you. Twilight healing. Her soul is pure and her spirit honest. She would make a good bishop." Rias looked at the pale girl, smothered so brutally in the beginning of her life. "What's in it for me?" she asked. "Always so egocentric," Issei muttered. "Fine. You have seen here what I am capable of." He dug into his pocket and removed a piece of paper. "This is a summoning circle. It's the only one in existence of this kind because this circle summons me. Save her, and I will allow you to call upon me in a time of need." Rias looked at the piece of paper he held out, weighing her options. Was she going to trust a stranger on his word? Granted, he was a powerful stranger, but a stranger nonetheless. Still she knew she recognized him. A face just out of reach, floating at the edge of her mind like a haunting dream. Rias took the leap of faith. "Fine." She took the paper from his hands and got to work. "Hey." Issei turned to Akeno. "I must say I love what you did to the exorcist guy there." She gestured to Fried. "Very sexy." She giggled. "You can take him with you when you leave, have yourself a new play toy," Issei said, not paying her words much mind. "What did you do to him anyways?" "Shattered all the bones in his arms and legs and scattered the fragments with enough force to pierce through flesh and skin. It's not sexy, it's a skill I'm ashamed of, but one I'm good at." Akeno made a look of sympathy. "What did you do to the three stationed outside?" "We reduced them to ashes," Akeno said excitedly. "My god, Barakiel's daughter. You are a true sadist at heart," he whispered to her. Immediately Akeno slapped a hand across his mouth. "Do not say his name here. He is no father of mine," she replied in an angry whisper. Their attention was drawn to the blonde girl who suddenly sputtered to life again. "Where am I?" she asked in a frightened whisper. "Am I dead?" Tears were brimming in Asia's eyes. "No. You have been saved," Rias said, tentatively embracing the girl. Thank you." Rias gestured to Issei. "You should thank him. He made me do it." Asia launched herself onto Issei, who was startled but awkwardly returned the hug. "Don't thank me just yet, Asia. I'm afraid there was a catch to saving you. I think Rias could explain best, she is an expert on the subject." Issei gave her a meaningful glance. She caught on. "Come, let's go outside," she said, gently touching Asia on the shoulder. Issei watched the two walk out the hole in the wall where the door had been. His eyes absently went across Rias' peerage. Her queen, the sadistic daughter of Barakiel. A girl, a latent natural power of Senjutsu, perhaps Nekomata. She was cute. Perhaps in a time where his scars had not run so deep he would have harbored something petty like a crush for her. And a boy with striking eyes. He remembered those eyes. A flash of emission crossed Issei's face. Perhaps that night in his life hadn't been a complete catastrophe then. One soul had been saved at least. "Excuse me, this may sound like a weird question. Your eyes, they somehow seem familiar. Have we met before?" the boy with the blonde hair asked. "No, you must be mistaken." Asia and Rias walked back into the church, the expression of the former saddened. "I guess you are not as happy anymore now, are you?" Issei asked. "I understand what had to be done. I am still thankful," Asia said. She walked up to Issei and tentatively pressed a kiss to his cheek, blushing like mad. "Now you lot should go, I have some business left to take care of here. Something I will not have you present for. Asia Argento, your soul shines bright, even with the taint of devilhood on it. If you ever find yourself in a need of me, talk to Rias. She will know what to do." Issei turned back to the altar, heading for the underground chamber. "Wait," Rias said. Issei turned around and quirked an eyebrow at her. "I like the puzzle that is you. A hint perhaps." Issei smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. He spread out his 14 wings behind him, earning gasps of awe from everyone. "I am the splinter that grew," Issei announced. He gave Rias exactly 7 seconds to observe, then turned and headed down the staircase. Issei paused, waiting to make sure Rias and her peerage, along with their new member, had left. He felt the presence of their souls fading. He found the underground chamber as he had left it. He walked up to the body of Rainer, who was barely breathing by now. He focused on her fading soul, looking for any excuse, any reason not to have to kill her. End her like her 3 comrades. He found a soul surprisingly pure for someone of her caliber. What had driven her to do these things? He sighed, getting to work. He repositioned her arms and legs in positions that roughly resembled where they should be, were their bones not shattered. He focused and willed her bones to mend, healing her broken body. He felt something wet on his face, rolling down his cheek like a tear. He wiped it away, only to find the back of his hand stained with his blood. He had overexerted himself again. Well, there was nothing to do about it anymore now. Issei picked up the unconscious girl and flung her over his shoulder. You are coming with me, little raven. The city. Nighttime. Rias, Akeno, Kiba, Kaneko and Asia were walking away from the church. But you, I swear I recognize that boy. Kiba said. I know, Kiba. I also have a feeling I have seen him before. You still have to admit he is cute though. Akeno interjected. I think Akeno has a crush. Rias teased. No, I saw him first. Asia complained, blushing furiously. The two continued to bicker when Kiba walked up to Rias. But you, I will be retiring for the night. Rias nodded and watched her knight walk off. The four remaining devils carried on. But you. Kaneko tugged on Rias' sleeve. What is it, my cute rook? Kaneko was silent for a moment, ensuring the other two were still too busy with one another to pay attention to them. My Nekomata side senses something off about him. Rias faked surprise. What do you mean? Someone with 14 wings more than Michael himself, mind you, all in different colors, shows up and clears a church full of exorcists in a small 10 minutes is not normal. That's not what I meant. Kaneko replied. Senjutsu is fueled by emotion and manipulates any it finds. Everyone feels, I sense Kiba feel, I sense Akeno, I sense you. Everyone. What are you implying? Rias asked. Not him. He didn't feel. Except briefly when he looked at Kiba. Deigning that all she had to say on the matter, Kaneko said her goodbyes and went home. Asia. Rias said, finally deciding to break the two girls apart. I don't suppose you have a place to stay for tonight. If you wish, I have a place for you. Asia blushed and bowed her head. That would be most kind of you. Master. Rias frowned. Not master. In my peerage, everyone is equal. We use the occult research club in our school as our cover, so you may refer to me as Butchu, her president. A bit later Akeno wished Rias a good night as well, leaving Asia alone with Butchu. You will be staying in our clubhouse tonight. It's warm and we have a spare bed. It's late and you are just newly reincarnated. You must rest and we will talk of your future tomorrow. After Rias tucked in her new bishop, she opened up a teleportation circle and headed for the underworld. She had a little research to do. The archives were exactly as she remembered them. A grand building, rows upon rows of pillars under the red sky. Perhaps 1,000 by 1,000 paces. A grand dome rested in the center of the building's roof. The archivist was on the same place she always was and most likely would be for the foreseeable future. She greeted Rias warmly. Lady Gremory. It has been a while since you last visited. Indeed it has, Lady Archivist. I would have announced my visit hadn't the need for it arisen so suddenly. The archivist smiled. It is of no consequence, Lady Gremory. How can the archives be of service to you? I am looking for information on a person. Most likely an angel. Perhaps one of old. The archivist nodded. Of course. Do you have a name, or an alias? Yes. He called himself the Splinter that grew. The archivist frowned. I have never heard of that one before. I know almost all the names of angels of old. You should try the newly reincarnated section. Row 96, subsection D. Rias bowed. Thank you, Lady Archivist. Rias dug for hours, finding absolutely nothing. She was engrossed in a copy of Theoretical Reincarnation of Demi-Angelic Souls when the chair across from her moved. Startled, she looked up to find her brother, Successor Gremory, Strongest Mayu and the Crimson Lucifer, sitting down across her. What are you doing here? Rias asked. I should ask you the same thing. My little sister is in the underworld and she doesn't even visit her brother. Rias sighed, turning her eyes back to page 461. I presumed you were busy, I wasn't gonna stay long, but it turns out the task I set out to do is a tad tougher than I had assumed. Tell me. Successor said. I am looking for information about the splinter who grew. His expression darkened. Where did you hear that name? It's not of any importance it is, Rias. Where did you hear that name? She looked back at her brother with an equally defiant glare. You will tell me all you know of him in return, agreed. A silent battle of wills was fought until finally Successor relented. Fine. The boy came to my town looking for a fallen angel. I helped him as best I could, given the circumstances. He hunted them down to an abandoned church, where he brutally maimed at least one person and chased off a small army of exorcists. Then he dropped a dead church girl with twilight healing at my feet and instructed me to revive her as my bishop. Did you do it? Successor asked. Yes, in exchange for this. She produced the summoning circle and handed it to him. Successor immediately dropped the paper as if it burned his hands. He silently swore, rubbing his hurt fingers. Well, at least that confirms it's authentic. He groaned. Spill. Rias said. Successor sighed. A deal is a deal. Follow me, little sister. Here is not the place to speak of this. 10 minutes later Rias sat across her brother in his luxurious office. There is a secret very few people are aware of. It's a secret so ugly, it could change the face of this world in a single sentence. And it's also the reason you are here. Therefore I must ask you to keep this conversation within these four walls. Rias nodded in understanding. I am ready. God is dead. She had not been ready for that. How is that possible? Wouldn't the world have ended with his death? Rias asked with a shocked voice. In the last conflict, the one which also claimed the four original Mau, God perished. The Seraph now rule heaven under Michael's lead. Somehow they keep the system working, but it's only a shadow of its former self. It was said that when God perished, nothing but a single feather of his wing remained. From that feather, something grew. Not God himself, but rumor has it that perhaps, given enough time, he will be a worthy successor of the throne. His powers are extraordinary and supposedly outrank everything else this planet has left. His more common alias is the Hand of God. Rias took a moment to process all this. Well, he outranks Azazel and Michael for sure. He has 14 wings. She said. How do you know that? Successor exclaimed disbelievingly. Rias looked at him with an "are you so dense?" expression. I asked him, of course. At least your story explains why he is called the splinter that grew. Rias. Successor said. This. He gestured to the paper, careful not to touch it again. Is something extraordinary. It's a gift, a time bomb and answers to unfathomable questions on a single sheet. Use it wisely. Rias nodded. Of course, brother. Heaven. The throne of Michael. It is done. Issei said, kneeling before Michael, who nodded in acknowledgement. Tell me, Hyoudu. What are you planning with your prisoner? Her soul was surprisingly pure for a fallen angel. I'm planning to see if I can reverse the effect of falling. You know it isn't possible to reverse falling. It's one of the first things we teach to both newborn and reincarnated angels. Michael replied. Perhaps, but I have a gut feeling that this is the right thing to do. Do as you please, but she will not be allowed into heaven. Issei nodded. Will that be all? No. Michael said to his surprise. I found my sister crying again after you left. He started. Issei sighed, dreading where this conversation was headed. They had danced around the touchy subject 100 times before. Although it's none of my business what goes on in your private lives, I wish you would at least look her in the eyes from time to time. The staring contest had gone on long enough. It was time Issei spoke his mind. With all due respect, Michael. Issei said in a cutting voice, purposely not using titles or honorifics. The transgression that all of you made, under the lead of your sister, is unforgivable on so many levels, it surprises me the Seraph have not fallen yet. My new prisoner has a soul 10 times as pure as all of you put together. The air grew heavy, laden with power as both men strained to retain their composure. Out of my sight. Michael said in heavy breathing. With pleasure. Issei stood, unfurling his 14 wings, just to show the bastard across him who was really in charge here. Then he abruptly turned and left. Michael would crash and burn soon enough. Issei knew. He knew the system was being strained beyond its limits, slowly caving. Even now heaven had to make less than honorable moves from time to time to control the decay as much as possible. He would not stand for it any longer. When the time came, he would do what he could for the world. Perhaps he could create a more stable system. Only time would tell. Regardless, he was done playing Michael's assassin. Meanwhile in the occult research club. Riser, for the last time, I won't marry you. Rias shouted. The blonde-haired boy merely laughed it off. I'm afraid you don't have a choice. You will marry me and you will spread your legs for the good of the underworld as you should. Rias Gremory. He spat out her name like it was a sour venom. Akeno, Asia, Kiba and Kaneko awkwardly sat in the couch opposite the two as the scene unfolded. Watch, Rias dear. Riser said, walking behind the couch. Out of a yellow teleportation circle a full peerage of 16, all in uniform, emerged. Even if you were to try to fight it. You can't. What will your pathetic, measly 5 pieces do against the full force of my full set? The only one who can fight on par is your queen. Riser walked up to his own queen and shared a tongue kiss with her, then smiled at Rias wickedly. Now you will be coming to the underworld with me, lest there be consequences. Out. Rias said, her voice full poison. Now, dear. Riser said in a mocking voice. Out. Rias shouted at the top of her lungs, blasting the floor in front of Riser's feet away with her destruction magic. Riser merely chuckled. All right, darling. Pack your bags, I will return in an hour for you. Riser said and gestured for his peerage to follow him out the door. Rias stood frozen until the door clicked shut behind Riser's last pawn. A single tear slid down her cheek. If you will excuse me. she said in a wavering voice, before heading into a teleportation circle of her own. I'm sorry for this mess. Especially for you, Asia. You should get to know us on our best behavior. Akeno said. I will go find her, I think I know where she is. Sure enough, Akeno found Rias over at the Gremory Manor, up high in the mountains. She was perched on a ledge in one of the pavilions overlooking the mountains and forests beyond the grounds of the house. Akeno sat down next to her, but said nothing. The two of them sat there for a good 20 minutes in complete silence. This is it, Akeno. 40 minutes from now my life is officially over. We can't fight him. I love the five of you with all my heart, but we can't take on his full peerage with so many pieces untaken. Tears flowed down Ria's cheeks as she looked down on her 8 pawn pieces, her remaining rook piece and her remaining knight piece. Akeno got up and embraced her king. You know you have the solution to your problem in your pocket, right? I would not use it for such a selfish purpose. Rias said. What other, more worthy, future purpose will there be if you don't stop this madness right now? Akeno asked. Rias chewed her lip in indecision. What if he hates me for it, Akeno? Akeno had an exasperated look on her face. Not you too. She silently begged. Hey, I can't help it, he is so damn cute. Issei safe house. He turned on the lights, taking in the interior of the room. It was small. A bed on one corner, a small kitchen in another. A couch and TV in the third corner, with a bathroom door between the bed and the kitchen. He walked over to the bed and looked at the girl who lay on it. Wake up, little raven. He said in a sing-song voice. No response. He raised his head and slapped her full across the cheek. Again, no response. Damn it. He felt something tug on his mind. Very well, the blackbird would have to wait. He found himself in the occult research club, where he silently materialized in a shadow-filled corner. 5 figures were gathered around an elaborate pattern, drawn out on the ground. It was an attempt to recreate a circle. They did an excellent job overall, but they messed up a few of the runes. Luckily the summon was linked to the paper and the paper alone. Perhaps he should have mentioned that. Do you think he is coming? One of them whispered. Issei silently walked up to Rias, leaned over and whispered in her ear. Who are we waiting for? Rias jumped, emitting a girly scream. You are supposed to appear inside the circle. She shouted. Oh. I'm sorry. With 2 large steps he stood in the middle of the circle. Alright, what now? Rias sighed at the peculiarity of it all. Short version. She asked. That will suffice. I am being forced into a marriage with an asshole douchebag, and I want you to win my freedom in a one-on-one duel with him. Issei blinked. Is that all? He asked, a little surprised. Yes. In fact, if he is really that precise about his timing, he will be arriving in 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello Rias, are you ready to depart? Riser said as the door flung open. Riser barged in, followed by his peerage. Aw, you invited a friend over. How cute. Riser said mockingly. Issei pointed a finger at the man and questioningly looked at Rias, who nodded. You talk too much. Issei said. Rias, do you not expect your friends to have any manners anymore? Issei reached out with his hand and forced Riser's jaw together. I said, you talk too much. You ignorant moron. Do you not realize you are talking to the heir of the House of Fen? Everyone in the room cringed when Riser's teeth smashed together again with more force. Did I fucking stutter? At that moment another summoning circle opened. Raphia, what are you doing here? Rias asked. Is there a problem, Rias Gremory, Riser Phoenix? You were expected in the underworld 40 minutes ago. I will not marry that asshole. Rias shouted. Hell yes you will. Riser shouted back. Within moments the air in the room filled with power as spells of pain and destruction were woven by the 2 teenagers. Stop this. Raphia said, raising her hand. Immediately the room quieted down. My master foresaw this outcome and gave me a means to settle this debate once and for all. If you will not go peacefully, this will be settled with a rating game. Rias made to protest, but Issei raised a finger, silencing her. Did your master state which peerages had to participate? The woman in maid's costume had a baffled expression on her normally stoic face. No, he didn't. Why is that of consequence? I will participate as Rias peerage. Raphia blinked twice, uncertain about the situation, but nodded. You? A boy against my whole set. Haha. This will be easier than I thought. I will have my queen warm your side of the bed for you honey. Riser said in a mocking voice. Rias Gremory, do you agree with these terms? Rias looked back and forth between Riser and Issei. We. But, yes. I agree. Riser Phoenix, do you agree with these terms? But of course. He laughed. Then it settled. The rating game will take place tomorrow at dawn. Alternate rating game dimension. Or clubroom. Issei sat in a meditative trance, focusing himself. It would be 5 more minutes until the rating game started. 5 minutes for Riser to finish his plans and finalize his strategy. He felt the weight of the knife in his hand. It would be the only weapon he took with him into this fight. The blade exactly 36 centimeters long with a center of gravity positioned 2/3 of the length of the blade down. He knew his weapon like no other, for it was he himself who had forged it. He remembered the hours preceding the game. "I talked to my brother. Is it true you are the hand of God?" Rias asked. "Ah yes, Successor always was a bit loose-lipped about these things. I shouldn't be surprised." He had responded. "Yes, I am the one who they call the hand of God. I thought you would take a little longer to figure it out, but you kind of cheated by asking your brother." "Oh, it was he who came to me actually." At that moment Kuoh and Kaneko had entered the Orc clubroom. "I hope you know what you are doing. I would not see Butchu's future go down the drain because you don't know what you are doing," Kuoh had said, giving a formal bow. "Kuoh." Issei had raised his hand. "No, it's quite alright Rias. It's good to have such vigilant friends about you. He has honor." "Did the two of you need anything else?" Issei asked. Kaneko blushed furiously and walked off. "That was strange." "Kuoh." Kuoh hesitated, uncertain whether to ask the question. "Come on, talk. I won't bite." "Probably." Kuoh had smiled at the added comment. "I was hoping you could spar with me." "I would be honored, but why me? You appear to be a formidable opponent. I would enjoy measuring my skill with yours." "A lie." Issei sensed it immediately but didn't push. "Very well. I believe Earth children have no school today, am I correct?" Rias nodded. "Very well, shall we head out to the field then?" Rafia's voice echoed through the fake dimension. "The game has started. Pawns please move towards the opponent's base to promote. The game ends when the opposing king dies or surrenders. Good luck." Issei walked out to the replica of the field. Standing there with his arms spread, waiting for Riser's peerage to show up. This would be an enjoyable fight. He twirled the blade in his hand, feeling its perfect balance. People always forgot it wasn't the type of weapon you fought with that mattered, it was how well you fought with it. He could have gone into this fight barehanded and won. 3 of Riser's pawns moved onto the field, along with 1 of his knights and a rook. Riser Sama said this would be easy. "Let's kill him girls." The rook said. "Disassembly time." 2 of the pawns shouted, before pulling out chainsaws and throwing themselves at Issei. He dodged Kuoh's first strike. "Very good, Kuoh. Fast." Kuoh turned and swung his blade across Issei's chest. Issei merely backstepped and touched the tip of his blade to the side of Kuoh's neck before he could recover. "Clumsy, Kuoh. Don't underestimate your opponent because he is armed with less steel than you are." 1 pawn, Riser, retired. The other chainsaw twin watched in horror as her counterpart's head made a graceful arc through the sky before it, along with the body, dematerialized. "You bastard." She shouted and threw herself at him with renewed fury. "Control your strikes, Kuoh. You were taught better than this." He dodged strike after strike, utilizing the gaping holes in Kuoh's defense to jab, push and punch him with his bare other hand. Strikes that could have been fatal if he had wished them to be. 2 pawns, 1 knight, Riser, retired. "Why do I see your eyes in my dreams every night?" Kuoh suddenly shouted. "Kuoh. This is not the time. Focus on the here and now." With a carnal shout Kuoh threw his sword at Issei in a futile hope to surprise his opponent. "As you wish. We will fight unarmed," Issei said, tossing his knife to the side. Kuoh was fast. Not surprising considering he was a knight. But he was not fast enough. Issei blocked 2 strikes before delivering a firm strike to his sternum, leaving Kuoh gasping for air. 1 rook, Riser, retired. Issei walked on, heading for the large building across the sports fields, twirling the perfectly balanced knife in his hands. He heard a twig snap in the brushes to his right. He stood motionless, concentrating on his hearing. Soft footsteps, they were certainly there, sneaking around in the greenery. He focused, breathed and with a single fluid motion, threw the knife. 1 bishop, Riser, retired. Deciding he would retrieve the knife later, he walked on. After years of training Issei didn't need weapons to disable or kill his opponents. A sizzle of power in the air alerted him. Quickly he rolled, narrowly avoiding a blast from the person who was presumably Riser's queen. His eyes scanned the night sky, looking for her. Another blast. This time Issei caught the bolt in his hands and returned it to its owner. He watched in satisfaction as the magic reached home, blasting the devil out of the air. She got up, coughing. "Impossible. You should not be able to catch my wildfire. Honey," Issei said, walking up to the scorched woman. "If you think your flame burns bright, try angel fire." He accumulated the blue flame in his hands and smashed it into her skull. An unnatural cry sounded from Riser's queen as her body started to disintegrate. Her body fell apart as sheer magic ripped it to shreds, burning her from the inside out. The chunks on the ground combusted in blue-white fire, erasing all signs of her once being present. 1 queen, Riser, retired. Issei turned invisible. "Where did you go, you coward?" Kuoh shouted. Issei delivered a firm push to the knight's shoulder blades, sending him stumbling. All is fair in love and war, Kiba. You will soon fail your king if the only sense you rely on is vision. One night, Riser, retired. Kiba was beating about himself wildly, trying to make anything happen to her to say. To say he was failing would be an understatement. Issei knew something was off with Kiba. He would not have lived as long as he did had he always fought like this. 6 pawns, Riser, retired. Kiba. For heaven's sake. If you have a quarrel with me, this is not the way to handle it. Issei had said, deciding this game was over. In rapid succession he jabbed 5 of Kiba's pressure points. The knight fell to the ground, no longer in control of his arms and legs. He dropped the invisibility, standing over the fallen devil. Now tell me what is bothering you. 1 rook, Riser, retired. Kiba growled something into the dirt. Issei sympathized and turned the boy over on his back. I didn't quite catch that. Issei said. I remember where I saw you. You were there that night, 3 years ago you were there. I heard your voice and when I ran, I saw your eyes. Issei's blood turned cold. Listen to my voice. You do not remember that night, Kiba. You will speak no more of this. This fight is over. He left the blonde-haired boy in the dirt, turning away from him. Come back here you bastard. I am not done with you yet. Kiba yelled. He returned to Rias. He will regain control of his limbs in a few hours. We should leave for the underworld. I need time to prepare. Lie. But he would deal with Kiba later. He was not yet ready for the truth, and quite honestly, neither was Issei. He found Riser, spectating from a rooftop above. Issei spread his wings and landed on the other side of the roof. A small girl with hair the exact same color blonde as Riser's was cowering behind him. His sister perhaps. Do you surrender, Riser? Laughter filled the air. I am a phoenix. You cannot kill me, therefore you cannot defeat me. Issei sighed and reached out with his mind. Riser collapsed in agony as all the bones in his body started deforming, moving like boils under his skin. With a bored face Issei sat down. Let me know when you are ready to give in. I can keep this up for a while. He bluffed. The scene lasted 12 excruciatingly long seconds. Stop. Stop this. The girl begged, throwing herself across Riser's body. I, Ravel Phoenix, surrender on behalf of my brother. Issei released his hold. Riser went limp, whimpering indiscernible words. He should be up and about in a few minutes, I caused no lasting harm. Issei assured the girl. Meanwhile in the spectating room, Issei had an audience. Is that him? Successor asked his sister, watching as the boy emerged from the orc clubroom and proceeded to the sports field. Yes. I really do hope he knows what he is doing. The whole orc was watching the fight, save Kiba. For some unknown reason Rias' knight was groveling in a corner, probably licking his wounds. He had not lost a duel in quite some time, as far as Rias knew. Beja gasped in horror as she watched Issei being surrounded by 4 girls. A knight, a rook and 2 pawns. Rias and Successor were fascinated as he leaped into action, decimating his opponents using nothing but a simple knife. Something sparkled in Kaneko's eyes as she watched him fight. Akeno was looking at the game like a child with her nose pressed up against the glass of a candy shop. Across the room the Phoenix family was watching with complex expressions as their prided heir was being owned. So it went on for a while, Issei dispatching one opponent after the other. Ria's breath caught as he was at last matched against the Phoenix himself. She was both relieved and disappointed as Issei won the game with about as much effort as snapping his fingers. It was rather anticlimactic after all. She realized he was ruthless. There was no long monologue, no epic fight to the death, no heroics. If Issei played in a movie, he was the kind of guy who would pull the trigger regardless when the bad guy tried to save his hide through some cliché, but wait, there is more speech. Riser Phoenix retired, Rias Gremory is victorious. Grafia finally announced. The patriarch of the House of Phoenix approached her brother. Through gritted teeth he forced out the formal words. Your peerage fought well. It was a good fight. Before Successor had the chance to reply the man turned on his feet, heading back to his people. At that moment Issei and Riser rematerialized in the room. You saved me. Rias shouted, throwing her arms around Issei. He briefly returned the hug, before pushing her off him. Blood was welling up from under his fingernails, running down his face like tears and trickling out of his nose. You are hurt. Rias said with a shocked expression. It's nothing. Issei said, wiping away the blood on his face. It's a side effect of my magic. He offered no further explanation. Someone cleared his throat. Rias and Issei turned to see it was Successor. Might I have a moment of your time? He kindly asked. Issei nodded and followed the Crimson Lucifer across the room, where they engaged in a hushed conversation. Rias saw Kiba was still huddled away in a corner. Kiba. Come over here. The boy looked up with a tired expression and stumbled over to her with lifeless steps. Aren't you happy your king is free, my cute knight? Rias asked with a concerned voice. A few meters over, Riser groaned as he regained some coherency. Rias, I know where we both remember him from. Kuoh said, gesturing to Issei. He was there when you bitch. Riser shouted. Everyone turned to face him as he manifested the fire of the phoenix itself in his hands. He won't have you if I can't. I will turn you all to ashes. Issei and Successor looked up as well now, their conversation rudely interrupted. When the flame left Riser's hands, it was headed for none other than Rias herself. Issei immediately bounded into action. With a speed that would make any knight jealous, he leaped across the room, unfurling his wings. Issei's eyes briefly locked with Kuoh's as his wings reached around the 5 members of Rias' peerage. Issei's teeth cringed together as the fire with the heat of 1,000 suns burned through all his protective wards like they were nothing. He felt the flesh of his back, the feathers on his wings melt, then go completely numb. Behind him he heard Riser collapse after such an expenditure of power. Then the darkness took him as well. Underworld. Rating game spectating room. Issei. The collective shouts of Asia, Kaneko, Rias and Akeno echoed through the room. He is still breathing. Get help, quick. Successor commanded. Not a minute later, Issei was on a stretcher, being carried across the expanse of the underworld, with Rias, her peerage, and Successor in tow. His back was charred, as well as his 14 wings, which hung lifelessly from his back. Nothing of their original splendor, strength, or color remained. Light streaked across the sky, arcing down to the ground. Gabriel. Successor said, his expression dark. Soon her white robes flowed across the cracked ground of the underworld. What happened? The shift of power was felt all the way into heaven, and it originated right here. Are you plotting a war against us? The seraph demanded an explanation right now. Then she noticed who was on the gurney. Issei. She cried in agony, rushing to his side. My love, what have they done to you? She cried. Asia, Rias and Akeno groaned. Not another one. They cried. Why is he not in Anshara? Gabriel asked worriedly. Hell if I know, now get the hell out of here so we can get him to a hospital. Rias shouted, pushing Gabriel out of the way, who fell to the ground. She remained there, kneeling on the ground as she watched her love be carried away, followed by the group of devils. What is Anshara? Gabriel turned to see Successor standing behind her. And why are you here, Gabriel? I should kill you where you stand. The doctors labored on Issei for hours. But Issei was a unique creature. Without any knowledge of what medicines or procedures would help, they were confined to the removal of dead tissue and cleaning of wounds. Now Rias, Akeno, Kaneko, Asia and Kuoh sat around the bed of the unconscious angel. It was not looking good. Issei's breathing noticeably shallowed over time, his skin turned a color close to a shen, and he was sweating profusely. Something fundamentally changed within Rias right there. She was not going to idly sit by as she watched the person who saved her twice now die. What are you doing, Rias? Akeno asked as she watched Rias rummage around. I will not sit here and watch him die, Akeno. She took out her 8 pawn pieces, her knight piece and her rook piece. You can't resurrect a full angel, Rias. Stop this madness, you will only cause harm. Akeno said in a futile attempt to stop her king. He will die regardless if I don't do something. With that she gathered up all the pieces and smashed them into Issei's chest. The dark. Akeno, Rias, Kaneko, Asia and Kuoh found themselves in a void of darkness. They stood on something, so there probably was a floor. If there was one, however, it couldn't be told from the rest of the whatever place they were in. Continuous whispers floated through the dark, most of them indiscernible. Every once in a while a few words would spike out. Fight the darkness, fight the silence. Where are we? Akeno asked, walking a few paces in each direction, seeing if it would influence their surroundings in any way. I don't know. The last thing I remember was Rias trying to use her evil pieces on Issei. Kuoh replied. And then we were here. Rias finished, looking around her with a sense of wonder. It's better if I don't, but what if I do? Are we dying? Do you think Issei made this place? Akeno asked. She fired a bolt of thunder, which flew on into the nothingness around them. Regardless if he did, I don't like this place. Rias replied. I want out. Asia whimpered. We must not feel. To feel is to hurt. To hurt is to be weak. To be weak is to fail. Okay Rias, that's it. When we get out of here, I'm telling Successor never to trust you with evil pieces ever again and take away your remaining ones. Akeno said. Kaneko, you have been quiet so far. What do you think? Rias said, ignoring Akeno's comment. Rias huffed, discontent with the lack of input a rook gave. Guys, do you notice something? Kuoh asked. The voices stopped. Kaneko said. Hello. They all swirled around. Issei stood behind them, clad in grey clothes. Issei. Rias said, rushing over to him. She stopped a few paces short. How did you heal so quickly? She asked when she noticed he had no wounds. I am not Issei. Was the curt reply. But you look exactly like him. If you are not Issei, then who are you? I am, or rather used to be Faith. What is that supposed to mean? Rias asked. I am. Used to be the embodiment of Issei's faith. Where are we? The Immodiclone tapped on the side of his head. Welcome to the vast expanse of our mind. There are more of you? Faith didn't respond, instead he turned and walked. Come with me. The members of the orc briefly exchanged glances before following the gray-suited boy. 6 more gray-clad Isseis fell into step next to them. The darkness around them began to change, molding to a form. A meeting room with 12 seats. Sit. They did as instructed. You are probably wondering why you are here. Faith said. I will keep it short, for time is limited. He gestured to himself and the other 6 Isseis. Are dying. Though the damage dealt to our body is substantial, it's not irreparable. Under normal circumstances. Like higher class devils have the ability to heal themselves or their servants from grave wounds in sleep, angels can heal too. We enter a meditative state called Anshara, in which we can swiftly regenerate our bodies, but are very vulnerable. Faith paused for a moment, letting the information sink in. Anshara's strength is determined by the selfless love an angel feels. That is why Issei. We are not regenerating right now. Rias frowned. But everyone feels selfless love of some kind. Even we devils do. Not Issei. Kaneko's words echoed in her mind, not him. He feels nothing. So we are trapped in Issei's mind while he is dying, and there is no way he is gonna save himself. That's the short version, right? Kiba asked. Pretty much. One of the unnamed Immodiclone said. We used to be Issei's 7 base emotions. Faith said. We are ego, fear, joy, anger, selflessness and love. Faith said, going down the gray Issei clones. Throughout his life, Issei shut us out one by one. If you had known him in his glory days. That time is behind us now. Issei has forgotten the power of feeling. He doesn't realize this, but his unconscious does. He used to visit us so often. Selflessness said dreamily. Your evil pieces will fail, Rias Gremory. Faith said. If you want to save him, you will have to make Issei feel again. Only then can he enter Anshara again. Do you wish to help? Faith asked. Yes. Rias, Akeno and Asia said in unison. Yes. Kaneko followed a bit later. Kiba grumbled something. The asshole still owes me answers. Very good. Before we allow you to talk to the conscious us, we would share a few memories with you to help you understand why we are in our current state. Rias nodded. Please know, should you fail, you will be locked in this oblivion forever. And we will not be here anymore to get you out. Really, Rias. No more evil pieces for you after this. Akeno said. Are you ready? Unexpectedly Kaneko walked up to Love and grabbed his wrist. We will save you. The darkness twisted around them once more, turned a bright hue of blue. The ground under their feet turned a bright fluffy white. Heaven. Laughter filled their ears. Around them angelic children played and shouted, running and flying around, happy. Amidst the jumble of children stood a lonely boy, 6 or 7 years of age perhaps. His hair was messy, his body frail, but when you looked in his eyes, it was unmistakably Issei. A stray soccer ball rolled to his feet. Issei reached down and picked it up. Hey. What are you doing? Give our ball back. One of the kids shouted, running over. Issei handed the ball to him. Can I play too? He asked in a shy tone. Who would want to be seen with a freak like you? The boy said in disdain, then ran back to his friends. Issei looked so sad, but no one reached out, no one cared. He didn't matter. And so ego was locked away. Faith's voice sounded. The scenery around them twisted again. They were in a dark place. Issei, now slightly older, was huddled away in a corner. He was locked. Stuck in the darkness. No one would think to come look for him. Issei had no friends. Oh, how he feared the darkness. He knew within reason of course nothing could be there, but his mind still projected his fears onto his senses. They would put him here, Michael and the others. Every time he stepped out of line they would throw him in here. They feared him, he knew. They would drug him up, spike his anxiety and make him live through hours of nightmares. Fear was such a useless emotion. It shut out everything else, completely disabled a person. How much easier life would be without fearing. Next time Michael locked him up, he would not fear the darkness. And so fear was locked away. Faith's voice sounded. Once again the shadows around them twisted. A quaint house, start of autumn, the leaves hued in bright colors around them. Laughter, clear like droplets of water on a mirror, clear like a crystal. It was Issei's laughter. Issei, now perhaps 13 or 14, rubbed the hair on the hair of a young boy. The child had fox ears and a tail. You really do take after you parents. Where did you leave your sister? A young girl with jet black hair bounded out of the house behind the two. Issei. The girl shouted, throwing herself at him, knocking him to the ground. Kuroka. How you have grown. It's been so long. A woman in the later stages of pregnancy followed Kuroka out of the house. Young lady. You have been taught better than that. With a pouty face, she got off Issei, who nimbly hopped to his feet and brushed the dirt off his clothes. It's good to see you again, he said, carefully embracing the mother. Have you thought of a name for your child yet? He inquired. Yes. Shirin. The mother replied dreamily, gently running a hand over the swell of her stomach. The family was happy. Issei would not feel such happiness, ever. Nobody cared about him, only his skills, after all. But he valued his bond with them more than anything else. He had saved the life of the father, Helion, countless times, saw him grow up, take his woman and create a legacy for his children. He remembered the wedding like yesterday. It was a joyous occasion, and Issei could feel the happiness he couldn't experience himself through them. The scenery shifted again. It was now winter. Something was wrong. All the windows in the house had been shattered, some of the woodwork showed signs of charring. That wasn't what mattered though. Red seeped through the snow. In the middle of the shattered remains of the parents lay 3 children, bleeding out. Issei trotted over, kneeling next to the oldest child, the boy. He whispered words of comfort to him as his breathing shallowed, eventually stopped. Bitterness filled him as he realized the 2 girls would meet the same fate. He turned away from the house. Nothing but death reigned here now. Never again would he hear their laughter. Nor would anyone hear his. And so joy was locked away. Faith said. The snow started to rage around them in a storm, hiding their surroundings between a blanket of pure white. What did you do? Issei's voice radiated fury. The blanket of white lifted to reveal Issei, standing over the cowering form of a devil. I only wish to get the best out of my servants. The man stuttered apologetically. You tortured them into submission. Issei said, the last word rising to an ear-shattering cry. You tried to turn a power loose not you or they can control. Do you know what the possible consequences are of forcing Nekomata to use their powers? You call that getting the best out of your servants. I'm sorry, I didn't mean no, of course you didn't. I have watched over those children since their birth. Do you realize what you have done? The man tried to crawl away from Issei, who gave him a firm kick to assure he stayed put. You turned them into killers. You took 2 innocent souls and twisted them till they broke. You jazzed them off. It will be a miracle of its own if I ever manage to get back on their tracks. Never in my 300-year-long life have I met someone as despicable as you. I assure you it won't happen again. Oh, it won't. Issei said in a voice cold as ice. In his hands he manifested pure power and struck, smiting the man from existence. Nothing but a pile of ash remained before Issei's feet. Issei hopped out the window, resting on the ledge outside. He felt sick to the core. Things should not have gotten out of hand like that. Issei doubled over and threw up. The vomit plummeted down to the abyss beneath him. He had just killed a man and achieved nothing through it. Nothing was learned, no progress was gained. He had killed because it made him feel better. Through the open window he heard the door open. Quickly he moved along the ledge so to remain undetected. Oh my god, she killed him. Kuroka killed her master. This was bad, very bad. Kuroka and her sister would be declared rogue now. Shirin was such a cute little girl. He had barely known her. The last time he had seen her was right after her birth, when her mother had insisted he held her daughter. Such innocence, lost forever. Anger served no purpose but to destroy. It was irrational, uncontrollable. It was best if he never felt anger again, it only brought hurt and anguish upon those he held to heart. And so anger was sealed away. Faith announced. After the scenery changed again, they saw Issei sharing a brief kiss with Gabriel. I must go now, I must see how they are doing. A worried look crossed Gabriel's face. Issei, my love, do you have to go now? Issei raised an eyebrow. Yes. I always look after those who I saved. No. Gabriel half shouted. Issei, you mustn't go. Okay, something was seriously off about her. I must be going now. Gabriel was at a loss of words. She looked around the room, desperately searching for an answer that wasn't there. Sleep with me, she said. I beg your pardon. Gabriel threw her arms around him, pushing his face into her bosom. You heard me, I want you to make me yours. Issei pushed her off him. Gabriel, yesterday you still declined me. Something is off about you. Rest, perhaps sleep a little. I must go now, my children need me. Issei, no. But Issei was already gone. Moments later Issei stood in front of the large mansion. It was midwinter and snow gently floated down, coating the house and the surrounding forests in a layer of snow. Those he found on his quests, the children whose parents he had been forced to kill, those whose parents had been killed. He brought them here so they could have a childhood. They were under his personal protection. He couldn't visit as often as he'd like, forced to keep watch from a distance. Gabriel or Michael had conjured up some reason to keep him away from this place each time he'd scheduled a visit. The last time he'd been around was 4 years ago now. It was shameful. He walked up to the great doors and knocked. No one replied. That was odd. Issei knocked again. He could hear hurried footsteps. The door opened, a slither of light falling formed the hallway into the night. "You are calling at a bad time," a female voice said. "You will let me in," Issei said, voice impatient. "I'm sorry, I have received no such orders," the voice replied. "You are receiving them now," Issei shouted, straining to control what remained of his temper. What was going on that no one wanted him to see? If someone had hurt those who were his, God help his soul. He grabbed the door and pulled hard. The woman who had been holding it closed stumbled onto the snow outside. "Sir, I don't know who you are, but you can't just." The door to the hallway beyond burst open, a child ran out. His eyes were not full of youth and joy as they should have been. They were filled with terror. "No!" the boy shouted. Blood splattered across the white marble tiles. A spear of light protruded from the boy's chest. Behind him in the hallway stood an angel. His eyes went wide as he noticed Issei, who immediately bounded into action. The angel had no chance to respond as light ripped through his body, tearing him to shreds. He ran further into the complex. Death was everywhere, dead bodies of children piled up. Michael would pay for this. Pay more dearly than anyone in this universe had ever before. No one scorned those who were his. Issei was livid. Every angel that crossed his way met a swift but painful death as he made his way to the central chambers. This blood crime would be repaid in full. This place had been meant as a safe haven for the victims Issei's world made. Issei noticed something and stopped. A single tear rolled down his cheek as he took in what he saw. The toddler, perhaps 3 years old, crucified on the wall with heavy-duty industrial bolts. His ribcage was split open, guts spilled out over the floor. Another angel ran into the hallway behind him. Issei reached out with his mind and ripped his memories apart. "We must terminate the Holy Sword project. The subjects will no longer be needed, for we have learned all we can. They only pose a liability now. Luckily they are the perfect test subjects. No ties, no family. Easily disposed. This pains me, but it's a necessary evil." Issei's teeth crunched together. The voice was all too familiar. "Gabriel!" he shouted in fury. Chaos surrounded him, children dying in bunches, chased by those who should be beings of good. He was too late. He could not save them. Issei sank to his knees as a stark realization hit him. He could not win. No matter how selfless he was, how much he believed, how much he loved, feared, believed, angered himself. It all brought pain and destruction upon others. The boy with blonde hair ran by, his breathing frantic. His mind brushed past Issei's. Issei Hyoudu was his name. He watched him make way outside, running into the woods beyond. He was already dying from several severe wounds. He would not make it, like the others. He watched without feeling as the boy collapsed. He thought he saw a girl in the moonlight, standing there next to him. Her crimson hairs reflected the moonlight. Issei, however, had a seraph or two to deal with. And so love, selflessness and faith were sealed away. The memory shattered, leaving nothing but the original darkness in its wake. Everyone had tears in their eyes, even Kaneko. "Wow," Rias said, sitting down on the ground, unable to take it all in. "No one should be made to suffer this much," Akeno said, joining Rias. Asia was crying on Kiba's shoulder, who was fighting to maintain a calm demeanor himself. Issei, the conscious one, sat some 20 paces away, facing the void, unmoving. Kaneko walked over to him and knelt in front of him. "Issei," she said. He turned his gaze to her. "Do you know my name?" she asked. Issei blinked twice. "Kaneko." The white-haired girl shook her head. "Look in my eyes, what is my name?" Tentatively Issei reached out, holding her face with one hand. "Sh. Shirin?" he asked in a wavering voice. "How much did you see?" he asked, afraid of the answer. "Everything," Kaneko replied, putting her arms around him and pulling him into her embrace. Issei sat there for a good minute. "I'm sorry, Kaneko. I failed you. You had to grow up without your parents, without your sister, under a cruel master." Issei's breathing quickened. "All I wanted to do was help. Maybe others would have me then, if I proved useful. Instead I failed everyone," he whispered, before breaking down completely. Kaneko just held him, refusing to let go despite his struggles. Eventually he just gave up and cried in her arms. Soon they were joined by Rias, Akeno, Asia and Kiba, who all put their arms around him. "Issei," Kaneko whispered into his ear, so soft the others who were huddled around wouldn't hear. "You already saved me once, Issei, let me return the favor. Please return to me. Come back from the void. Feel for me, Issei," she begged. I will try." And it was like she was holding the 7-year-old kid who had just been called a freak, so fragile, so innocent. Issei's breathing calmed down over time, growing even and deep. He was sleeping. "It's done." The 4 girls and Kiba turned to see Faith, now in a bright blue garb, sided by anger in red, joy in yellow, selflessness in green, ego in purple, fear in dark blue and love in white. Issei is now in Anshara. The members of the orc opened their eyes. They were in the hospital room. Issei. Rias said, looking up. He was there, still alive. Now, however, he was floating perhaps half a meter above the bed, wrapped in a cocoon of white light. It weaved around him, restoring bone and tissue. Everyone sighed in relief. Issei would live. Underworld. Medical ward. It was night. Or as much night as it could get in the underworld. Rias and the others had left at dusk, about an hour before he emerged from Anshara. The doctors had insisted he stayed for at least 2 more days, so they could monitor his progress. The concept was preposterous of course, but Issei decided to humor them. Issei glanced at his wings, not having bothered to hide them. They had grown back even more beautiful, his feathers now tipped with filaments of silver. He stared ahead of him, knees pulled under his chin, pondering. The game had changed. His attention was diverted when the door opened. In stepped Kiba, who shot him an uncertain glance, but grabbed one of the nearby chairs and sat next to Issei's bed. "I'm surprised to see you this late at night," Issei said. "Do you ever sleep?" "The older an angel becomes, the less sleep they require, but yes, I sleep. Once about every 2 months or so. How can I help you?" Issei replied. I was wondering if you would tell me about my birth parents. I never knew them." Issei's brows furrowed in concentration. "If my memory serves me right, your father was Tenzo Yudo. I don't remember the name of your mother, but I could check the archives of Tokyo, where you were born." What happened to them?" "Murdered in cold blood by a stray exorcist I was chasing. I stopped his killing spree a few hours after their death." "Oh." Kiba looked a little sad. "Do you know what they did for a living?" "I think your dad was a regular office clerk," Issei said to Kiba's disappointment. "Sounds harsh, doesn't it? Everyone who doesn't know their parents hopes for a fairy tale of some kind." Kiba nodded. "Kiba, everyone is born with the potential for greatness in them. Who your parents were in no way defines who you are or can be. For starters, you were born with a sacred gear despite your parents being the most regular people you could imagine. Look how far you have made it. You serve as a knight for the heiress of one of the great 4 houses of the underworld. You were already set up to sway more power than they ever would have, and you are barely 16. Why did the Holy Sword project have to be terminated?" Damn, Kiba was on a roll with the questions. The results were unyielding. As you perhaps remember from your time there, you were taught intrinsic knowledge of the exact workings of the Holy Sword. That is closely guarded information. The risk of it running loose was too great. The dead don't talk. But the institution of the Holy Sword project was yours," Kiba said accusingly. "Yes, it was. I, however, never consented to the project, nor it being done on the children I saved. I tried to shoot the project down as soon as the first drafts of it were made. Later I learned I was unsuccessful, and I was betrayed by the person closest to me. Gabriel could not have hoped to conceal the project forever," Kiba said. "No, she hoped to sway me with the answers the project was speculated to provide, or, if that failed, blame the killings on the fallen angels. She broke me, Kiba. What she did to you and your comrades broke me." "I know," Kiba said. "Right, I forgot you lot decided to invade my mind." "We didn't exactly invade your mind," Kiba said. "Ria's evil pieces brought you into my mind, yes?" Kiba nodded. "She took active action to place them in me, yes?" Kiba nodded again. "So, without my consent, you entered my mind through an active act." "Okay, if you put it that way, I guess the use of the word invade is condoned," Kiba said. "But aren't you grateful for what we did for you?" Kiba asked. "You saw the memories, don't you think death would have brought me peace?" Kiba was silent, finding no way around the logic of Issei's answer. "What happened afterwards? What did you do to Gabriel?" he eventually asked. Issei's expression hardened. "I was unable to undertake legal action against her, if heaven even has such a thing, since I found out she was backed by all the Seraph. I found out she got close to me only as to make sure I did not interfere in their project. Therefore I took the only action I could. I shunned her, denied her existence for the most part. She aches for my forgiveness, something she will never gain. It's the only penance I can take from her, so it will have to make do. One day." Issei continued. "I hope the regret will fester so deep she will voluntarily fall. She came here, you know. Soon after Riser burned you to a crisp, she came demanding answers. She was yelling something about a shift of power that was sensed all the way in heaven. She thought the devils were plotting war." Issei snorted. "Sounds like Gabriel. Inconsiderate, rushed, and rude. To understand her you must first understand where I come from, and that is an explanation I would rather only give once, with the rest of the orc present. You can manipulate bone, and after you do, you bleed. Why?" Issei's eyes were piercing. "Careful, Kiba. I may be in your debt, but don't push it." Issei silenced Kiba. Issei remained silent for a few moments, letting Kiba think he wasn't going to answer. Every 100,000 angels or so, one is born with a gift. They are granted the power of manipulation. What they can manipulate is random, ranging from rocks to emotions. Most of these angels become seraph, those who don't revered members of angel society. Using this power turns our blood acidic. Too much of it and the acid eats through the veins in our body. It first becomes apparent in highly blooded membranes, such as nose, eyes and nails. Carry on longer and more major arteries will open up, such as the ones on the arms and legs. Overuse will fry the brain or drain of too much blood, killing the user. And before you ask, it's considered very rude to ask what an angel can manipulate. Kiba sat in his chair, contemplating this new knowledge. I hope you have the answers you came for now, Kiba. You should rest. Issei said. Kiba nodded and turned for the door. Issei. Issei looked up to where the knight stood in the doorframe, his back to him. Thank you. And with that Kiba was gone. Earth. Kuoh Academy. Issei stood across from Rias and the other members of the orc. Where will you go now? Rias asked him. I don't know for certain yet. I had a bit of a falling out with Michael. I have a bit of a project of my own to take care of, maybe I will turn my attentions there now. You could stay with us. Rias said spontaneously before clasping her hands over her mouth. Issei gently laughed. I appreciate the offer, Rias. I will remember it when I find myself in need of shelter. I will, however, not burden you with my presence. Rias remembered the memories. Issei was certain no one would want him around voluntarily. I want you to stay with us, she said with certain voice. Something sparked in Issei's eyes. Was it fear? No, that's quite alright. I really should go, he said in a nervous voice. Stay, Kaneko said, walking over to Issei and embracing him. Guys, please. Issei begged desperately. You, my dear Issei, are not going anywhere. Akeno said, embracing him from behind. Issei's shoulders sagged. Fine, but I'm bringing my project and I don't think you lot will like it. Later that afternoon a cry of anger reverberated through Kuoh's grounds. You're bringing that fallen angel with you? Rias shouted in disbelief. Hey, it wasn't me who insisted I stay with you lot. Besides, she is not ready to come for another few weeks. Rias and Issei stood in the bare room that was to be his. She is the one who killed Asia, Rias said through gritted teeth. Yes, hi, my name is Issei Hyoudu. I was there too, you know. Rias sighed and brought a hand to her forehead, gently rubbing it. What exactly did you hope to achieve with her anyways? She asked. Something tells me I can restore her. Call it a gut feeling if you will. Issei replied. And how do you hope to do that? Your guess is as good as mine. I will keep her close, probably as a servant. We will see if the spark within her can be reawakened. Rias was silent for a few moments. Fine, but she shares your room. The orc had gone through the trouble of clearing out a room used for storage purposes for Issei. He would not be using it a lot since he rarely slept, but he realized it would make for a fine prison with the proper wards in place. What's in the boxes? Rias asked, pointing to the 5 cardboard containers Issei had teleported in earlier that morning. Issei glanced at them. The answer was. Mostly weapons and artifacts. Want to help me unpack? He offered in an uncharacteristic display of social skill. He would be staying under her roof after all, it was only fair she knew. Of course. Which one first? Rias asked. Doesn't matter, pick one. She stared at the boxes, carefully she picked the one on the far right up and placed it in the middle of the room. The first item she removed was large and kite-shaped, wrapped in paper. That, Issei said, as Rias unwrapped the package, revealing a shield. Is the shield of Daybreak, deflects fire and darkness of almost any kind. Had I had this baby with me, Riser's attack would have been for naught. Carefully Rias placed it on the ground. The rest of the box contained a myriad of daggers and knives, all with an interesting background story, but nothing major. After the box had been emptied and disposed of, the two stared at the display on the floor. Where were you planning on stowing this away? Rias asked. Issei walked over to the blind wall on the far side and reached down, brushing his hand across the wooden panels on the floor. Rias, there is life in everything. I may not have green fingers, but all angels can make plants grow, he said. Energy flowed from Issei into the wood. The wood started to grow. A full-fledged tree formed, complete with leaves. Issei molded the plant to cater the forms and shapes he needed. You only need know where to look for it. He finished with a smile. Now then, let's get this sorted out. He gestured to the weapons on the ground. Daggers on the right, knives underneath. The shield goes up there. Soon they moved on to the second box. The plant, it's as if you knew exactly how to grow it, Rias said, admiring his handiwork. I am restoring the arrangements as they used to be in heaven. I would not be much of a warrior if I did not know my way around my weapons rack. Issei replied. What's this? Rias said, removing a helmet from the second box. Careful with that. But it was already too late. Rias screamed in agony as she dropped the metal. She clutched her hand, her fingers turned a deathly pale, blackening at the tips, tears growing in her eyes. I told you to be careful with that. Issei scolded her as he grabbed her hand. He folded his fingers over hers and muttered a few words. When he released his hold, her fingers were pale, but not blackened anymore. The feeling in those should return within the hour. If it doesn't, immediately come find me. Rias was in too much of a stupor to say anything and merely nodded. This, Issei said, pulling on gloves and removing the rest of the set from the box, is the armor of Nerg. He quickly discarded the gloves, throwing them in a corner where they immediately rotted and fell to pieces. It absorbs the energy of anything it touches, in effect withering it into non-existence. This includes any and all spells, projectiles and weapons. It then uses this energy to form barriers around itself, making the wearer as good as invincible. Putting it on is a pain though. Issei levitated the armor to the center of the rack. Shall we move on? He asked. Rias sat down on the ground. You carry on, I don't think touching your stuff is such a good plan. She muttered weakly. Gently Issei ran a hand down her long crimson locks, making Rias shiver involuntarily. You know I didn't mean to hurt you, right? He asked worriedly. Rias nodded and assured him with a genuine smile. Next Issei moved to a large flat square box. Gently he lifted the lid. This must, by far, be the favorite weapon out of my collection. He pulled out an ornate bow, complete with visor and stabilizer. Behold the bow of Artemis. It never misses, as long as the shooter's intent is true. He pulled back the bowstring, making an arrow of light manifest within the taut bow. What I love most though, is that these arrows do whatever you wish. They can do anything from stun to enchant to kill. Issei walked over and placed the bow directly under the armor. I hope you won't mind if I skip this one, Rias. He said, gesturing to a fourth more regular box. It contains rings and artifacts. Very interesting, but we would be here for a while if I had to explain what each and every one of them does. Rias nodded. That's quite alright. I trust you not to bring artifacts of genocide into the orc. Well, perhaps the apple of Eden. Issei. Rias interrupted. Fine, fine. You win. Issei said, putting the box aside. Issei gestured to the wall. Rias, what is here, is well known to be in my possession by others. However. Issei grabbed the final box, a long and thin one. I cannot emphasize how important it is you do not flaunt the existence of this weapon to anyone. Issei lifted the lid of the box. Behold Aurora. Issei said, raising the large two-handed blade of gold and silver. Ria's eyes went wide. You own the sister sword to Excalibur? She shouted in disbelief. I spent 200 years gathering up the pieces and reforged her myself. Issei said with a hint of pride. It is, without a doubt, the most powerful sword in existence now that Excalibur has been split into fragments. Rias watched with awe as he walked over to the wall and placed the large sword to the left of the armor on a diagonal angle. What's supposed to go there? Rias eventually spoke, gesturing to a single open spot between the daggers and knives. Ah, of course. Issei said. He reached into his coat and pulled out his dagger. He tapped it a few times with the fingers of his other hand, contemplating. Then he turned to Rias. Take it. It means more to you now than it does to me. He said, handing her the blade with which he had won the raiding game. Thank you. She said, gracefully accepting the gift. But now you have an empty spot on the wall. She said. Well then, perhaps you should present me with a dagger of your own sometime. He replied with a sultry smile. Rias didn't know what to say, she just stood there and blushed. Why did this talk of daggers have her so flustered? It's still a little barren, don't you think? Rias said when she had calmed her nerves enough. Right. Issei said, crouching down and touching his hand to the floor in the middle of the room. Would you like me to go? Rias asked, making to leave. No, just stay there for a second. Rias watched as around her furniture grew out of the floor and walls. A writing desk. Chairs and a couch in the far corner, several shelves and a closet. Her attention soon shifted to the unusually huge bed, curved into a semicircle, which had grown out of the third well underneath the window. I will need to have a mattress and sheets tailored for that. Plants can only grow so much. He muttered, brushing his hand through his hair. That's quite a bed right there. You planning to share it? Rias asked. Issei looked at her with a deadpan and spread out his 14 wings, the tips reaching from wall to wall. Wings, remember? He was silent for a few moments. Although I would not mind sharing. I always feel like someone cares when someone shares my bed. He said. You know the entire orc, save Kiba maybe, would share your bed with you if you let them, right? You helped all of us in a time of need, and we care about you. I know you don't believe it, but we truly do. Rias said. Even you? She blushed, considering her words carefully. Yes. Even me. Earth. Issei's chambers. It had taken some effort, but he'd found someone crazy enough to fashion him the peculiarly shaped mattress with a single set of linen. More couldn't be made in one day, but the man had promised to send a few more in the days to come. A lot could be achieved with the right amounts of money. Given he lived several lifetimes earning money and nothing to spend it on, Issei had amassed plenty of it. With a sigh, he collapsed on the bed. It had been a long day. He glanced around his room, noting the many empty shelves. He would have to do some shopping. And then there was Rainer to deal with. The issue on its own gave him a headache. All in its own time, though. He would deal with her tomorrow. Issei, the rest of us will be leaving now. We will be back tomorrow afternoon. Rias yelled from the clubroom. Alright, good night everyone. He yelled back. He ran his hands through the sheets, basking in their softness. He couldn't remember the last time he slept. 3 months ago perhaps. Yes, he would sleep tonight. He struggled out of the sheets, brushed his teeth, stripped off his robes and carefully selected a throwing knife, placing it under his pillow, and turned off the lights. Issei was almost asleep when he heard the light tap of footsteps in the main clubroom. Carefully he reached for the knife, holding it at the ready as he watched the door. Ever so slowly it opened. The figure who walked in was of small stature, undoubtedly female. Kaneko? Issei asked, his suspicion confirmed when the moonlight that shone through the window lit up her face. Shouldn't you be home? Kaneko said nothing, but stripped down to her panties and bra and climbed into Issei's bed. Kaneko? He asked uncertainly when she cuddled up to him. You said yourself you wouldn't object to someone sharing your bed. He would kill Rias tomorrow. Kaneko, I am over 300 years old. Isn't this somehow wrong? Kaneko pressed a finger to his lips. We are both immortal, for reasons I cannot explain I feel attracted to you, therefore this isn't wrong. She replied. Kaneko, you mustn't be attracted to someone like me. Issei said. For God's sake, I sleep with a knife under my pillow. I doubt you would find a more broken soul anywhere on this earth. He whispered to her. That, Kaneko replied, is exactly why I feel attracted to you. Issei sighed. Normally he would have protested, but he was so tired. So tired. Issei was uncertain, and Kaneko must have felt the tension in his body. You can touch. She said, pulling his arm over her waist. Issei gave in, possessively tugging the nekomata into his chest. If you insist on doing this, Kaneko, I have but one request. Don't hide your true nature from me. Kaneko was silent for a minute. Then you must do the same. She whispered in a soft voice. Issei spread out his wings and wrapped them around Kaneko, cocooning her. He felt her soft tail brush against his side. Thank you for this, Kaneko. Issei whispered, gently tugging a stray strand of hair behind her ear. Good night, Issei. He was about to drift off again when the door opened once more. Asia? He whispered when he saw the glint of golden blonde. Issei, if she gets to join you, I want to as well. She whispered, stripping and crawling into bed with Issei as well. Asia. His soft complaints fell on deaf ears as she snuggled into Issei's back. He sighed and wrapped a set of wings around her as well. I hope you are up for a rough night. He heard Kaneko whisper. What do you? The door opened a third time, revealing Akeno. She dropped her kimono and silently joined the three on the bed. She placed herself around Issei's head, pushing away his pillow and resting his head on her bare stomach. It was a bit of a stretch, but Issei managed to free his third right wing for her to use as a pillow. He wasn't even surprised anymore when the door opened again and Rias walked in, dressed in a see-through nightgown. She too crawled into the bed, but, noting as there was really no Issei left to cuddle with, settled for a small expanse on the bed to Issei's left, near his feet. He heard everyone's breathing even out and deepen. He couldn't help but feel a little bad for Rias, who had probably voluntarily given way for everyone else first. He stretched out with his 4 remaining wings on his left side and gathered her up in them, wrapping her in softness and warmth. She murmured something, but soon returned to a deep sleep. As Issei lay there, surrounded by the 4 beautiful women, he felt a myriad of emotions well up inside him. Sadness and grief over his past, affection, but most of all happiness and a sense of being truly cared for. Something he hadn't felt for centuries. A tear of happiness escaped his eye. Gently he ran his fingers down Kaneko's side, reassuring himself all of this was real. With a warm feeling in his stomach, Issei drifted off to a deep dreamless sleep. Perhaps with these devils, everything would become better. Issei woke at dawn, feeling refreshed and better rested than ever before. When he tried to move, however, something weighed him down, pinning him to the bed. Memories of the previous night returned to him. Opening his eyes, he looked around him, noticing all the girls were still where they were the previous night. He rested his head on Akeno's stomach again and firmed his grip on the nekomata in his arms, basking in the warmth that surrounded him. It was not until 2 hours later that the first devil woke. Kaneko stirred in his arms and turned around, facing him. Sleep well? Issei asked. Kaneko nodded, blushing. Issei hadn't noticed how close they were, almost resting their foreheads against each other. Unconsciously they both inched closer until finally, tentatively and almost shyly their lips met. Kaneko. Issei whispered. I don't know if I have the capability to love a guy, she pressed her lips to his once more. If you don't, I will love for the both of us. She reassured him before slipping out of his embrace with a cat's grace. He watched her slim figure, still only in panties and bra, recede into the bathroom. Issei knew he shouldn't, but he lusted after her. She was just too cute. Ara, now I want one too. Before he could turn to Akeno, she had already pressed her plump lips to his. Dumbfounded, he watched her slide of the bed to and leave. Issei. He turned over and looked into Asia's eyes. She looked at him with a pouty expression. What is it, Aussie? And so he received his third kiss of the morning. Issei knew he was indulging in sin, that he shouldn't be doing this, but it just felt so inherently right to him. He watched as Asia too struggled out of the covers and headed out of Issei's room. He knew that if he continued down this path, there was a chance he would fall. That was, unless he loved true and they loved true as well. Only then could an angel and another be together without the angel falling. Could he even still love? He wasn't too sure after Gabriel. The old wound still ran too deep. Good morning, Issei. Rias groaned as she stretched. Suddenly her eyes opened wide. Oh God, I'm crushing your wings. I'm sorry. He tightened the grip of his wings around her. They are strong. He replied, deciding that was all the explanation he was going to give. I put you there last night. Rias went still. You cared. She whispered. Issei laughed and shook his head. Rias dear, I am not certain whether to thank you or be angry with you. Why not both? She said in a sultry voice. You can punish me for being a bad girl. Since you won from Riser, I am practically yours to do with as you please regardless. Issei gained a mischievous glint in his eyes. Is that so, Rias Gremory? He said, ghosting a hand over her slim figure. Yes. She gasped, answering more than one question. Good. Then out you go. Come on, go get changed. I am sure you have a day of productive devilish things to do. She looked at him with pouty eyes. Tease. She said. Hush, you will live. Issei. She said. What is I? HMMPF. She smashed her lips to his. We will do this every night, Issei. As long as is needed till you realize people care about you. Just you. And then some more if you will still have us. She said, before unwrapping herself from his wings and walking out the room. Girls. Issei sighed, dropping back down to the bed. He needed to meditate. It had been a while since he last visited love. He sat on the bed and folded his legs under him. Resting his hands on his stomach, Issei centered himself and dove into his mind. He stood in the void nothingness that was his subconscious. Love. I need a moment. He shouted into the darkness. Love is not coherent, too confused, at the moment. Issei spun and saw a magenta copy of himself composed of ego and faith. Faith in the knowledge of oneself. Everyone's logic worked differently after all. Logic? Issei said, greeting his Amada clone. You have come to contemplate the case of your devils. His emotion stated. It wasn't a question. Of course not, logic was Issei and Issei was logic, they both knew the same things. One might wonder what the use is of having such a structured mind, or delving into it, if no new knowledge could be gained. That wasn't necessarily true. This type of meditation was useful if one wanted to, say, only know the logical aspect of a situation. Or the angry side, or the loving side and so forth. What is your opinion? Issei said. Well, you are the living manifestation of what remains of God. I don't think you will have to worry about falling. The remaining question, however, poses more of a topic. Angelic relationships are rare, if not unheard of. Logic stated. I am the manifestation of God's anger. Issei corrected his emotion. Am I even capable of loving one, let alone multiple people? The manifestation of God's anger is still a manifestation of God. God was known for his all-encompassing love for all that existed under his reign. If someone loves you true. Logic said. The chance is high you can love them the same way in return. Issei nodded, but this didn't help him much further. We are not blind, it's clear that they all gravitate towards us. If, for the sake of argument, we entertain the notion a relationship would be viable, who should we pick? The question was cold, calculated, logical, just like the emotion who asked it. We cannot choose one without hurting the others. Issei replied. Then take them all. Was Logic's reply. Are you mad? Issei said. Like you said, angelic relationships are rare, let alone polygamous ones. Besides, how can Rias peerage ever show their faces in the underworld when it becomes known they are with an angel? I think that's something for them to worry about. Perhaps you should point out the possible consequences of their choice. Issei nodded. And as for polygamy, you get to take over heaven sooner or later anyways, what you do doesn't matter. You get to rewrite the rules afterwards anyways. Logic said. Now you should return. Rias is running towards your chambers and I sense her distress from here. Issei opened his eyes. The sun shone high in the sky now. How long had he been in meditation? 3, maybe 4 hours was his guess. Sure enough, he heard hurried footsteps growing closer. He winced as he got up from the bed, allowing blood to flow through his legs again. Rias burst into his room, breathing heavily. "Rias, what's wrong?" They took Kaneko. "Rias, calm down." "Who is they?" Rias was stumbling over her words, trying to form a coherent sentence. Issei walked towards her and slapped her straight across the face. Damn, that was becoming a bad habit of his. Putting his arms around her, he pulled Rias into an embrace. "I said, calm down. Tell me what happened." "We were out on orders to clear out a stray devil. And. Rias was heaving throughout her explanation. "Come," Issei said, pulling her out his room. He made way for the sink, filled a glass of water and gave it to Rias. Gratefully, she took a few sips. "Alright, let's try this again. Tell me what happened." She swallowed hard before giving her explanation. "We were dealing with a stray devil. Managed to take her out easily. Then there was this flash of light and Kaneko was gone." Issei maintained his calm, more panic would not help the situation. "Do you think you might have been lured out?" he asked. "I don't know. I just. And then. Issei. I have never failed to protect my servants." "Rias. Take a rest, calm down, shower, whatever makes you feel comfortable." "Are the rest of the orcs still on the scene?" he asked. Rias nodded. "Where can I find them?" She gave him directions to an abandoned warehouse downtown. "Alright, Rias. I'll get your work back. Don't worry. I will be back soon. I hope." He pressed a cell phone into her hands. "For if I need to reach you quickly." He added. He then grabbed Aurora, quickly bounded out of the orc clubroom, spread his wings and took flight. He quickly covered himself with an invisibility spell to avoid being seen by the mortals a bare 100 meters below. He angled his primaries into the wind to increase his agility, making a few tight turns around some high risers before gently setting down outside the warehouse. Thibaut was trying to calm down Asia, who was in tears. Akeno sat to the side with a distraught expression. Issei walked up to her and undid the spell. To say he startled Akeno would be an understatement. "Dear Mayu, Issei, don't scare me like that," she said, breathing heavy. "Tell me what happened," Issei commanded, but barely paid any attention to her words. He started pacing around the yard, nodding and yoo-yooing every once in a while, to at least pretend to listen to Akeno. The area was heavy laden with a highly poisonous form of senjutsu, borderline yujutsu. "How many yujutsu users do you know?" He cut straight through Akeno's story. "I don't know. I'm not an expert on the subject. I know of an SS-class stray devil who was rumored to wield the power, but I don't know for certain. Not many yokai have made their existence known." Akeno replied. "Would you happen to remember her name?" Yes. I think her name was Kuroka." Issei's blood ran cold. "I should have known," he muttered. "Thank you, Akeno. Return to the orc. I'm afraid this is beyond your capabilities now." "Where are you going?" Akeno asked as Issei walked away. "A place I never hope to revisit in the near future. Heaven. The throne of Michael." The throne room was empty. If there was a god left, he was smiling on Issei today. Carefully he moved past the golden throne to the chamber beyond. Behind the throne stood his objective, the Eye of the World. If one would not know better, it would be dismissed as a simple marble basin. Issei, however, knew better. The Eye of the World was one of the most useful tools of heaven, allowing angels to find any living being on earth with some simple magic. It was filled with crystal clear water. Issei picked up the dagger on the edge of the basin and carefully nicked a finger. When the drop of blood hit the water, it turned a milky gray and then whirled in an awe-inspiring display of colors before finally turning a murky black. Issei took a deep breath, leaned in and pushed his face through the surface. "Come now, Shirin. You mustn't be so stubborn." Kuroka's voice sounded. "I will die before I use Senjutsu," Kaneko shouted. Kaneko was in a cold, dark place. It was windy. Lights unfolded miles beneath her, spreading far in each direction. Was she on the roof of a skyscraper? In the distance, a church bell started to ring, striking a low call. Kuroka grabbed her head, shaking it as a dull headache spread through her skull. Devils truly could not stand anything remotely holy. He recognized the loud banging. It was a relatively new bell, post-1900 for sure. Issei could tell since the method of casting had changed since then. "Come now, Shirin. Soon Vali will come and take us out of this vile place," Kuroka said. "I don't want to go." There was an imperfection in the sound of the bell, like it had been cracked once. Issei searched through his memories. He had once known every church bell in the world made these kind of tracks very easy. Churches had gone out of fashion in the previous 100 years or so, though. Now only the bigger and older ones remained as landmarks. Suddenly it popped into his mind. Cologne. The world's largest free-swinging bell. It was cast in 1923, cracked in 1951 and then repaired. Fat Peter is what the humans called it. Swiftly Issei withdrew from the basin, coughing slightly as he regained the ability to breathe. Well, what do we have here? Issei spun around only to be faced by none other than Michael himself. Should I ask for what treacherous purpose you infiltrated my throne room, or should I be done with you and kill you right now? You will do no such thing, Michael, said Issei, drawing Aurora from his back. He had to fight with his bare hands. Manipulation was useless against other angels with a gift. They were immune. Ah, so you were the one who reforged it. Michael said. No matter. I have blocked off all exits. You are, in fact, trapped here. 9 more figures walked into the room. Issei felt dread rise in his stomach as he recognized the 9 remaining seraph. Issei. He turned to face Gabriel, who made to go towards him, but was held back by Raphael. You will die here, Issei. Heaven has no time to deal with whatever little escapades you have undoubtedly planned by now. Uriel said. Issei responded by crossing Aurora in front of his body, taking a battle-ready stance. You're welcome to try, bird boy. No one calls me bird boy. Uriel shouted angrily, drawing his own sword and flying at Issei. Time slowed down for Issei, who carefully backstepped, narrowly dodging the sword. In response, he angled Aurora, slightly nicking the angel's 3rd and 4th wing. Everyone stood, breaths held, and watched as blood dripped from the flawless white of Uriel's wing. If you can bleed, you can die. Issei said, before spinning around, slashing at Michael with a graceful whirl. A lot of things happened at once right then. Serial, who had raised her bow, fired an arrow at Issei. Meteron, Rigel and Sandalphon raised their hands, calling upon their divine power in an attempt to smite Issei. Raziel, Remil and Michael raised their swords, ready to fight Issei in melee, taking a protective stance in front of Uriel, who was nurturing his wound. Issei nimbly bent, avoiding the fatal shot Serial sent his way. Unable to completely avoid it, however, it managed to cut a narrow but long scratch across his cheek. He shifted Aurora into an Yurumi. Carefully wrapping the blade around his waist, he ducked low and sent the 5-meter-long blade out in a slashing motion. Remil and Michael jumped, avoiding the blow to their lower legs, but Raziel was too slow. He cried out in pain as the sharp edge of Aurora sliced through his shins like a knife through butter. A sickening crack was heard as the man's legs gave way, leaving him bloodied on the ground. Issei was unable to finish him, however, distracted by a retaliating arrow from Serial. Avoiding taking the shot to the heart, Issei turned. He groaned as the arrow embedded deep within his waist. Not stopping, he broke the shaft to fist length from his body. He threw the flimsy piece of wood at Uriel, who once again charged at him. The move caught the man by surprise. It did not do any significant damage, but it provided the opening Issei needed. With a powerful thrust, he had Aurora embedded in the man's sternum. Uriel gurgled, coughing up blood before going down. Quickly Issei pulled Aurora from the dead body, shifting it into a koppish. He whirled around, placing it in front of him as Metatron, Rigel and Sandalphon finished their spell. The beam of light split right across Aurora's blade, but scorched up Issei's arms pretty bad. Quickly ensuring none of the wounds on his arm were beyond 2nd-degree burns, he hopped over the charging Michael and removed the 3 mages' heads from their bodies with a single motion. Another one of Serial's arrows hit home, embedding in his shoulder as he was not paying attention. Issei staggered. Remil took advantage and thrust his blade forward, slicing open Issei's calf. Issei roared and moved the curved blade in a wild slash around him. He scored a good hit on Remil, slicing open his ribsage. The blow was not fatal, but incapacitated the angel. Raphael, who had been passively watching and keeping Gabriel in check, now pulled out his sword and shield and stepped forward to aid his liege Michael. Issei engaged him with a strong overhead swing. Raphael deflected the blow with his shield and sliced straight down with his own sword, cutting large chunks off Issei's lower 3 left wings. The blade in Issei's hand shifted into a haladi, more suited for the close combat battle. Issei parried and dodged Raphael's blows as Michael tried to find a gap in Issei's defense. Serial dared not shoot, in fear of hitting either one of her 2 allies. With his remaining strength, he thrust Aurora straight forward, piercing Raphael's shield. Then he switched Aurora into a morning star, shredding the other angel's arm. The shield split in 2, falling to the ground. Quickly Issei picked up one of the heavy pieces and hurled it across the room. Serial, who had not seen that one coming, was hit square on the face and was knocked out. Enough. Something hit Issei hard on the side, knocking him off his feet. He slid several meters across the floor, coming to rest at the bottom of the stairs leading up to the throne. Michael walked towards him and raised his sword. Die now, Issei Hyoudu. He pointed the blade towards the sun, and it gained an eerie glow about it. For the good of this world, I end you. Issei closed his eyes, realizing this was the end. No. Before Issei could do anything, a flurry of white wings covered him. I will not allow you to hurt him. Gabriel stood between Issei and Michael, arms spread. Gabriel, he killed 3 of the seraph, wounded 5 more. Would you stand between him and justice? Michael said. Would you strike down your own sister? She retaliated. Issei. Gabriel said, not once taking her eyes off her brother. The shields are down, leave. Quickly. Michael radiated fury. You would oppose heaven? He asked, anger rising in his voice. Gabriel ignored her brother. Issei. I'm begging you, leave before it's too late. Quickly Issei struggled to his feet, hesitating for a moment. Then he sunk through the clouds below him, dropping to the earth below. He could hear Michael's shout of anger behind him as the shields went up again. Issei adjusted his heading for Europe, wincing as the numerous wounds on his body were stretched by the strain of his muscles. Quickly he looked over himself. What he saw was not good. His clothes were in tatters, stained by blood, mostly his own. His arms were a deep red and he was losing feeling in his fingers. The arrow in his shoulder was mostly a nuisance, but the arrow embedded in his abdomen hurt. Bad. It had probably caused internal bleeding. The wound on his calf stung. He had already noticed he could not put too much weight on it, which meant the cut had probably struck a few tendons. Issei looked up, seeing the city of Cologne rapidly head towards him. He flared out his wings, but forgot his lower 3 left wings were mostly clipped. The result wasn't pretty. He left a long trail of blood behind him as he crashed into the roof of the skyscraper, successfully scratching open most of the skin on his back and opening up bleeding wounds on his burnt right arm. He winced as he felt the bones in his upper 2 wings break. He groaned as he got to his feet, everything hurt. Kuoh, you have no idea how pissed I am right now, Issei said through labored breathing. Who do you think you are to interfere with the doings of a superior creature, Naya? A voice behind him asked. Issei turned around. She had grown. That was to be expected, of course, since the last time he'd seen her she'd been a 7-year-old girl. Recognition filled Kuroka's gaze as she took in Issei's appearance. Issei. Kaneko shouted. She was bound up a few meters away from Kuroka. Will you give Kaneko back to me willingly, or must I snap every bone in your body first? Issei asked. Even if you knew me as a little girl, you will not take my sister, Naya. Kuroka replied. The green poisonous mist emanated from Kuroka. Have it your way. Issei muttered, then shattered Kuroka's ribs. It felt good to be matched against an opponent on which that trick worked again. Angels with the power of manipulation were immune to the gifts of other angels, and the Seraphal had gifts. He watched as Kuroka hit the cold concrete, it gave him no satisfaction. He quickly went over to her and pulled her on her back, ignoring her cry of pain. You will recover, don't move or you will speed up the internal bleeding. He said, before hurrying over to Kaneko. Quickly he changed Aurora into a dagger and cut her bindings. Above Issei, clouds were starting to gather. Michael was quick, he had to give him that. Come, Kaneko. Quickly. You don't want what is after me to find your sister in her current state. He said, pulling Kaneko to her feet and tugging her towards the rooftop access. Issei did not trust his wings to make it down to the street safely. Can you walk? She nodded. You're hurt. It was a statement more than anything else. Yes, and I don't have the strength to fight you as well, Kaneko. Now please. He said. Issei could feel the blood loss tugging at him, beckoning him into that dark void. Quickly he led her down the emergency stairs, not bothering with the shocked cries of the human onlookers as they saw Issei's appearance, wings included. He exited the tower on a large crossing, busy with traffic. Kaneko, can you open up a magic circle? Issei asked, not stopping. No, I never found the need to learn, Akeno always does the circles. Kaneko replied, running next to Issei. Ahead of him Issei saw white light descend from heaven. Shit. He silently swore, tugging Kaneko into a side alley. Not a moment later a light projectile exploded at the alley entrance. Quickly Issei flipped open his cell phone. Thank the Lord for modern conveniences. He impatiently waited as the phone rang once, twice. Issei. Where are you, is Kaneko safe? Ria's voice came from the other end of the line. Come here. I will strip every last feather off your wings. Michael shouted from the street. Rias, I don't have time. I have Kaneko, but Michael is after me and he is angry. Quickly he turned another corner, tugging Kaneko with him. Can't you simply duel him into submission? Rias asked. You know, Gabriel was shouting your name all the while when we dragged her to the dungeons. Michael yelled, before another projectile of light narrowly missed and exploded a few meters ahead, shattering the brick wall of the building ahead. If I didn't have to fight the rest of the Seraph first, then maybe yes. Issei shouted over the explosion. Rias, you must come for Kaneko, she still has a life to live. We are in Cologne, near the old cathedral. You can turn on the TV if you want to watch, Michael is causing quite the ruckus. He said, running into the building Michael just opened up. And what about you? Rias asked, worriedly. Ahead of him was the heavy thumping of industrial machinery. My life is forfeit. He said softly, repeating the words he had said so often himself. Goodbye Rias Gremory. It was an honor. Issei. But he had already hung up the phone. Quickly he hurried up the iron stairs ahead of him and burst through a set of blue double doors. Ahead of him rows upon rows of extruders were thumping away. He ducked around the corner, pressing into the wall. Kaneko, listen. You must run, get to safety. I will distract Michael. You must hide, call Rias and have her get you, preferably with her brother. Issei said, pushing the cell phone into Kaneko's hands. I will not leave you to die here. Kaneko said defiantly. Kaneko, please. You are being selfish. You must think of the greater go. He was cut off when she pressed her lips to his. If we were talking about the greater good here, I'd have to sacrifice myself to make sure you got out. Kaneko retorted. Kaneko, you should really stop kissing people you don't know. She shut him up with a slap across his cheek. I do, you fool. She replied, then kissed him again to prove her point. There you are. Said Michael. Quickly Issei pushed Kaneko to the side and dove after her. The wall behind where they had just been standing exploded, revealing Michael. Pushing Kaneko behind him, he raised Aurora once more in full double-handed state, the blade quivering in his hands. You always did insist on doing things the hard way. Michael said, raising his own sword. Metal clashed against metal as Issei and Michael traded blows. Issei was at a clear disadvantage, continuously parrying and dodging blows, never able to go on the offensive. With a powerful sweep, Michael knocked Issei to the ground again. This is the end, Hyoudu. Something white then struck Michael's side, knocking him off balance. Michael stumbled back, then one of his wings caught in the industrial machines behind him. Michael shouted in anger and pain as the machine started to pull him in, shredding his wings as it went. Fuck you. You bitch. He shouted, furiously trying to pull out of the grasping metal arms. No one hurts my Issei. Kaneko stated. She kneeled over Issei. Are you alright? She asked. I sustained no new wounds. Thank you for asking. Issei groaned. Issei's vision went wide as an explosion reverberated through the room. With horror in his eyes, he watched Kaneko fly across the room, hit one of the walls, leaving a significant dent, then collapsing into the floor, where a puddle of blood started to form around her. Michael laughed maniacally behind him as he struggled to his feet, stumbling over to Kaneko, falling a few times in the process. Slowly the laughter was overpowered by the thumping of the machines, as Michael's body was finally completely consumed. He dropped to his knees, turning Kaneko over on her back. No. He whispered, as he took in the damage Michael had done. Kaneko's stomach was opened up. Scratch that, was destroyed. He could see the layout of her internal organs, her heart slowly faltering, the blood oozing into her stomach cavity. No. He repeated, pulling her head onto his lap and slowly tugging bloodied strands of her white hair out of her face. Slowly Kaneko opened her eyes. I guess I got to sacrifice myself after all. She said, weakly smiling at him. Issei leaned down and gently pressed his lips to hers. He felt Ria's aura appear, along with the rest of the orc, and then rapidly head closer. He ignored the gasps and cries of anguish as they entered the room, solely focused on the girl in his arms. Oh no. Rias said, hurrying over to them. She sank to her knees next to Issei. Rias. Kaneko whispered. I am here. Rias replied, taking one of Kaneko's hands in her own. Issei is mine. She whispered. It was the last thing she said, for her heart stopped and so did her breathing. At that moment something fundamentally changed in Issei. Something powerful, something ancient awakened in him as he pressed her mouth to his. Ambrosia. The food of the gods. The sweet honey-like substance welled up in his mouth and flowed into hers. The effect was immediate. Kaneko gasped, eyes opening wide as all the muscles in her body tensed. Rias whimpered as the rook crushed her hand. Kaneko's hazel eyes searched around, finally locking onto Issei's icy blue ones. The black ooze dripped out of Kaneko's mouth, nose and eyes. Flesh and bone stretched and opened up, pushing the rook piece out of her body. Her devil wings appeared, then shriveled and turned to dust. In their stead a set of pure white wings, tipped with blue fire, unlike any other pair wings in existence, unfurled. Immediately a white cocoon surrounded Kaneko's body, as whatever drove Issei pushed her conscious mind into Anshara. What did you do? Rias asked incredulously. I think I made her an angel. Issei replied, before fainting. Issei's dream. Darkness. Thumping. He was hurt, bad. Anshara was keeping him alive, mostly. He would get the bitches, kill them, get his revenge. There was a light, someone stopped the machine. How stupid of him. Softly he chuckled in himself. Oh my god, someone is in the machine. Well, what are you waiting for, Frank? Open it up, goddammit. The creaking of a hatch as it opened up. A face peered down, eyes growing wide. His hand shot out, grabbing the man around the throat, pulled him down into the machine. The man screamed in agony as teeth ripped the flesh of his neck apart, opening up the major artery. He drank, gouged on his blood. Slowly he rose, stepped out of the machine. His nude form was drenched in blood, his clothes having long since been claimed by the machine. Oh my god. The other man said, slowly backing off, turning to run. With a flick of his wrist the man froze, then slowly turned and walked towards him. His eyes were wide in fear, the man was unable to control his body. Michael laughed like a madman before he dove into his next meal, feasting on the blood. He would not be so easily killed. Issei gasped and sat up. Shirin. She's safe. Next door in fact. You gave the church quite a run for their money. They ended up bribing half of Tokyo out of talking. Issei turned to face Rias, who sat in a recliner next to his bed. She licked her fingers and turned the page of her book. What I find most interesting however, Rias said, is that there is no mention of devils being turned angels. She snapped the book shut and held it up for Issei to see. Not even in the tome of rules of reincarnation. He made to throw the covers off and get up but was quickly pushed back into the pillows by Rias. Not so fast. Your body might have regenerated but you lost a lot of blood. She told him and handed him a glass of water. Gratefully he took a few sips. Issei was silent for a while. I honestly don't know what happened myself. It was like instinct, I didn't think, I just did. He said, trying to word things correctly. Rias looked at him with a funny expression. How is the hand? He asked, gesturing to the appendage Kaneko had crushed with her rook strength. She raised it and deftly moved her fingers one by one. It has had a few weeks to regenerate. She stated. Weeks. How long was I out for? Issei asked. 2 weeks, 4 days. Issei suddenly felt a lot weaker and sank even further into the pillows. I'm sorry Rias. He eventually stated. What for? I pretty much stole one of your servants from you. I made you come all the way to Europe to watch it happen, what's not to apologize for? Issei said, closing his eyes. He felt the mattress give way where Rias sat down on it. Gently she lowered her head onto Issei's chest and embraced him. You saved one of my friends. Besides, I got the evil piece back, so I can get a replacement. Well, Kaneko will never be replaced, but strategically speaking you caused no harm. What will you do with her now? Issei asked. She is still my friend, even after what happened. She will always be welcome here. Rias replied. Gently she started to trace patterns over Issei's bare chest. What happened to the other evil pieces anyways? I meant to ask, but never got around to it. You mean the ones I used on you? Issei nodded. The 8 pawn pieces shattered, but the remaining knight and rook emerged as mutation pieces. She saw Issei making to speak up again. And don't you dare apologize for it. She scolded him. It was my decision to use those pieces. Had you not won from Riser I would no longer have had a peerage regardless. 8 pawn pieces was a price I was willing to pay to save my savior. She loves you, you know. Issei raised an eyebrow at Ria's statement. If a girl uses her dying breath to inform another girl that a boy is hers, I'd say the signs are pretty obvious. Issei had to admit that statement could have been made by logic himself. What am I going to do, Rias? Issei asked indecisively. Either you love her back or you don't. That is a choice for you to make. Rias, how can I love? She gave him a strange look. What kind of question is that? She asked. You know where I came from, I am the manifestation of anger and revenge. I am an angel, angels don't do relationships. Also I'm not blind. I can tell that Asia, Akeno and even you gravitate towards me. Rias was silent for a few moments. Although I appreciate your honesty. She said, sitting up and straddling Issei. Asia, Akeno and I can deal with that problem on our own. Who knows, maybe we will share you. She said, winking at Issei. That being said, you are a person Issei, a being made of flesh and blood. That means you are capable of feeling the whole range of emotions, including love. Believe me, I can know, for I saw him with my own eyes. There is a manifestation of it in there. Rias said, pressing a kiss to Issei's forehead. Furthermore, judging from the blood of the seraph dripping from Aurora and the screaming anger of Michael, I don't think you have much business with the angels anymore. Alright, she had a good point there. Now if you are feeling up to it, I can take you to Kaneko. She has been asking for you since she woke up 2 weeks ago. Rias nudged Issei's arm over her shoulder and pulled him off the mattress. The walk through the hallway felt like a marathon. Kaneko was fast asleep, hugging her pillow close to her. Her newfound wings, way too large for her body, unfurled behind her back. He looked at Rias and gestured to the chair next to her bed. Rias nodded and gently lowered Issei into the chair. I will bring you some food if you think you can keep it down. She mouthed. Issei nodded in thanks. He heard Ria's footsteps retreat out the door. On the nightstand next to Kaneko's bed was a note block, a pen next to it. He remembered how he had seen her as a small child. The one he had known and raised so many years ago. Those fleeting days he had spent with her family. He picked up the pen and paper and wrote. 7:15, Sunday morning I hear a voice softly asking me. Have you awakened yet? Will you come downstairs with me? Will you have to work today or are you free? And will you come play with me then? The time passes so fast. Yesterday I saw her first. Cradled in my arms. Her beauty is a spell. She wears her years so well. I blink my eyes and see the change. But no matter how she grows, in my eyes she will always be small. 7:15, Sunday morning I see her close the door. I can cease my guard, she is home. I would have rather picked her up. But she asked me not to be there tonight. She now finds her own way home. And then, when I close my eyes, we walk together again, on the beach. Her hand in mine. And then, she stops time. It's just like then. And it's like she needs me so. I hold her tight. I want to remember her how she was. Issei paused, resting the pen on the paper. He glanced over Kaneko's sleeping form, seeing how she had grown. She was no longer a girl who needed a guardian. She had flourished, fallen in love with a man who she shouldn't love, one who'd known her as a baby. Issei promised himself he would always be there for her. He sighed and pressed then pen to the paper, writing the final lines. 7:15, Sunday morning she hears my voice, gently waking her. The day is your grand day. I blink my eyes and see how her hand now forever belongs to another. But no matter where she may be, in my memory she will always be with me. And no matter how much she grows, in my eyes she will always be. A tear dropped onto the paper as he wrote the final word with a quivering hand. Small. You alright, Issei? You look a little upset. Rias asked, who walked in with a tray holding 2 bowls of soup. He cleared his throat, wiped his eyes and shook the lingering emotion off. Yes, I'm quite alright. Thank you. He said, gracefully accepting the soup. Rias gestured to the notepad with his sleek, neat handwriting on it. Can I see? She gently asked. Issei hesitated, but handed her the paper. He heard Rias gasp. Issei, this is beautiful. She whispered. Rias, I'm so confused. Issei whispered, putting down the soup and burying his head in his hands. Unbeknownst to him, Rias gently set down the soup and shook Kaneko awake. When she looked up at Rias with large questioning eyes, she raised a finger to her lips and wordlessly handed her the notepad before retreating out the door. Tears welled up in Kaneko's eyes as they moved down the paper. Of course she remembered Issei's memory, but had not grasped its extent. She remembered that beach, a strong but gentle hand holding hers, how she had snuck out of bed early in the morning when Daddy's friend had stayed over. How as a 5-year-old girl, she had run out during the night under his guidance to play with the forest animals and returned early in the morning. Issei had been there, interwoven through her life from the day it started. A life she now asked him to share with her. Issei was over 300 years old. She felt incredibly small as she realized how the child in his arms, a mere blink of the eyes later, now wanted him to hold her at night. In his eyes, underneath all that Kaneko, she was still a little Shirin. It was something she would never change within him, as Shirin had meant so much to him. Carefully she sat up and pulled the covers over her shoulders, draping her wings over them, much like a cape. Gently she edged towards the side of the bed and got to her wobbly feet. Very slowly she sat down on Issei's lap, wrapped the blanket around them, and cocooned them in her wings like Issei had done for her. She wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face in his chest, much like a small child would. She could hear the thumping of his heart, felt it soothe her, like it had soothed the small child she had once been. Kaneko. Issei said weakly. She shook her head. No. Right now you need Shirin, and that is who I'll be for you. Who I'll be forever, just like I'll always be Kaneko for you. Kaneko felt Issei's hands wrap around her in a protective embrace. Even after all these years, you still haven't truly felt, Issei. She softly whispered. She could feel his internal struggle. I have forgotten how to. For so long I blocked it all out. She removed one hand from behind his neck and took his hand in hers, then reversed the grip so her hand was in his. This is where your heart once was. She said, emphasizing the connection of their hands. Take it from there, bring it here. Bring it to me. Kaneko felt his frame shudder under hers. Do you remember your brother, Kaneko? His name? Your father? Your mother? He asked in a shaky voice. No. She whispered. All I remember was my hand in yours. For the first time in 200 years Issei mourned, freely and uncontrollably cried over the losses he was forced to endure. The losses he was not able to process because his life had moved ahead full speed. He held her like she was the only thing anchoring him to this existence. Soon Kaneko's tears mingled with Issei's, and the two merely held each other, consoling in one another's presence. That's it guys. Thanks for watching and supporting us. See you in the next part.